We're live, guys. We're all live. Welcome to the madness. If you're hearing chaos in the background, it's because Anton and Spencer are trying to hammer a stool so that it will be lower and more easily sittable. And by trying to, I literally mean they're just hitting it with a hammer until it just unsticks itself. So hi guys, we're here. I don't know. We are kind of surprised we're doing a thing again. That's a thing.
Well,
so
you during the stream and get unstuck, that'll be comical.
It would be comical, but try not to do it. Hi, Tony. Hello. Yeah, I don't know how many people. We didn't give anybody any warning, and we're also streaming at a different time, so you know how it works. So early just because this is a 3-person stream, and so this is when everybody was available to be one of the 3 persons. Natasha's here.
Hi.
And Anton's here once he is able to get a stool to sit on.
Hi.
I'm pretty sure I have an early call time tomorrow, so that's why I'm here. So
yeah, we don't want Natasha to have to like stream until midnight and then go home and sleep for 2 hours and then have to go work.
Because I would cry.
We would cry. So yeah, so we are reading. I'm just realizing that our stream is upside down on this camera, but you know what? It took us so long to get it to work that it's fine. We're rolling with that.
Do you want it? Right-click transform and then
I can just
rotate 180 in OBS.
Okay. Thanks, Texorcist. Spencer, our Texorcist, is here, and is the only reason we're live right now.
wait. Right-click transform.
Yeah, right-click. There's a menu for transform.
Back in a few minutes.
And then you can rotate
Cool.
180 on the top.
I don't see transform.
The top.
I don't know how anyone can see anything. Apparently my...
Oh, within the source. Okay, gotcha.
I know how to stand in front of a light so people can light around me.
Yeah, I know to stand very still and look pretty.
Sweet.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thanks, Spencer.
Thanks, Texorcist. So yeah, so we're surprising everybody with a stream, and we haven't, we also haven't, oh, I should get it here. We gave nobody any warning and we're streaming at a different time, we gave nobody any warning and we're streaming at a different... We're just gonna do the thing and just chill, and anybody here can chill with us. Currently there are 3 people in chat. We appreciate you.
Go get yourself some tea or
Go
some
get
hot
yourself some
chocolate
tea.
or coffee or whatever your
We're gonna read, and
poison is.
we can actually probably put this down if you need more space over here. But we are reading Star Trek Corona, and Natasha can tell us a little bit about this. Yeah, I know you haven't read it. But...
I haven't read it, and I don't even really remember what the premise is. I can tell you where I found it in my room. So back in 2010, when I was a young 21-year-old that was absolutely depressed, like all as anything, I had a fixation with Star Trek, and that's what got me through. And so I bought all of these Star Trek novels, and the Star Trek novels, even though they're official novels, are generally speaking fan fiction. So some of them are better than others. Some of them are, they're all technically considered canon, but I think it's now, there's so many of them, like there's hundreds of them that were published within, I think it started when, I think it started like in the 60s, the 70s, and they got published all the way through. I think they're still being published today.
According to this one, which came out in 1984, there were 50 of the Star Trek The Original Series books published and 12 of the Star Trek Next Gen published at the time.
And it's like one of those things where they're all numbered, but then there's duplicate numbers that are different numbers, and it's also like comic books where you have a bunch of different stories that are set in the same universe that are sort of kind of together, but they don't really reference one another.
Well, those Scooby-Doo books that we've been reading on stream are literally YN fan fiction. It's
there
like
you go.
walk into your favorite restaurant and there are your friends, the Mystery Inc. gang. Like, that's just what it is. Like, it's been kicking around.
I love it. So yeah, that's basically what it is.
Let's read the back. On the back of it, we are just on our main... Did I do that?
No, I
think
did that.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
There we go. Thank you. The back of this says, an awesome sentient force of protostars, Corona, has taken control of a stranded team of Vulcan scientists. The Enterprise has come on a rescue mission with a female reporter and a new computer that can override Kirk's command. Suddenly, the rescuers must save themselves and the entire universe before Corona unleashes a big bang. Hey, YouTube, we're not talking about we're not talking about that Corona. Please don't yeet me. Don't smosh me off of my own stream again.
Corona means crown in Latin.
And it was the
This was published in 1984 when we all still thought we had a cheerful future ahead of us, instead of what is our future now, in all of its forms.
who wants to read the prologue?
I can read it.
We can
All
take
right.
turns reading.
Is it blurrier than you?
I think it's just moved a little close to this because sometimes it happens when
Oh, the glare.
the glare from that. So like, what?
Whoops, sorry.
What? There we go. What cables? I don't have
What-
any cables
what are
on
you
my
talking
floor.
All
That's
right.
an urban legend.
Oh, I might have to read you guys the acknowledgments because this looks funny.
Okay.
My wife, Astrid, and friends Karen Schnaubelt Turner and Kelly Turner were particularly helpful. Always useful for reference and authority was Joe Tremble and Dorothy Jones Hyde Star Trek Concordance, which, incidentally, there's a lot of commas in this, I helped illustrate in its original publication. Does that mean I'm a Trekkie? You bet. Alan Brennert has always been helpful, especially when we bearded the producers of Star Trek's abortive second TV series in their dens during story conferences. So, like, a lot of these authors actually were writers of some of the original Star Trek screenplays, which is interesting. Let's see. The idea for Corona arose during one of such sessions. The glaring errors, if any remain, are my own. More subtle differences from the canon are probably matters of interpretation. All right, so.
That sounds like he said that's not a me problem, that's a you problem.
Yeah, no, that's
I can
definitely.
adjust this lower. 'Cause it's
Definitely.
like
You go for
it's
it.
getting the top of your head.
Yeah, go for
and
it.
then I think it's focusing on your top of your head.
All right. From horizon to horizon, the sky was filled with a dark purple glow, broken by wisps of milky white and luminous green. Tiprala felt the crunch of ages-old pebbles beneath her boots, the only sound besides that of her breathing and the spacesuit's instrumentation. She had left the station to be by herself for a while and to watch the rise of the new suns barely a year old. Station 1 sat on a planetoid on the outer edges of the Black Box Nebula. The station's crew consisted of Tiprala, her husband Grake, their 2 children, and 2 research assistants, Anauk and Tekosa. In reserve, that is, in the cold storage of suspended animation to save limited resources, were 30 volunteers, whose expertise ranged from astrophysics to space medicine. Tiprala herself had once been one of the most renowned physicians on Vulcan, quite a rarity for her youthful 60 years. But she had run afoul of the Vulcan Science Academy by using unorthodox methods of logical analysis, methods which had brought charges of heresy, and had imposed this kind of self-exile on herself and her family to avoid an even more painful confrontation. Ultimately, then, she was the one to blame for all that had happened. Discoveries had been made, but not in time to save the 30 in cold storage who were as good as dead. Okay.
That's harsh.
She had learned more about Ibarca radiation than any other previous scholar, but at what a cost. Why is there an exclamation mark? It's fine. And she had learned other things she might never be able to tell. 48 hours earlier, Greg had broadcast the normal space message that they had prepared together. They had deliberately concealed their action from the children. Day by day, the children grew stronger, more willful, directed by a force neither she nor Greg understood. The power the children had over their parents and the station crew was disturbing, to say the least. Had she been human, she might have been near panic. Yeah, us humans. But there was nothing more they could do. In 10 years, the message would reach a Federation buoy far beyond the nebula's outpouring of radiation. The buoy would rebroadcast Greg's words and the science report by the faster medium of subspace radio, shortly thereafter, perhaps. But it was too much to hope for. She thought briefly of her distant relative, Spock, because apparently all Vulcans are related.
Yeah.
A science officer aboard a Federation starship. Let's just say Vulcan is a large planet. Not everyone is related to everyone else. That's
Surely that can't be the way that it works, because I have questions.
that's I feel like whatever. It's fine. It's probably written by a white man, but it's fine. Let's see. Where was I? Okay. What would Spock do in a situation like this? She had never had the chance to know Spock well. Despite his human ancestry, he had always been held up to her as an example of what a Vulcan could be and could achieve. The glow on the horizon brightened. The asteroid was turning inexorably toward the source of their new knowledge, the source of their difficulties, the infant stars. One by one, they appeared, huge oblate, reddish blobs of light, their edges diffuse and irregular. They were triplets, collapsed from the nebular dust and gases. Gravity had drawn them into mutual orbits, their own growing mass finally cooking off the fusion of hydrogen deep within the stellar envelopes. That was a lot of words. The final stages of their birth, the final collapse into true protostars, had taken less than a month, catching the researchers by surprise. Theory had predicted a much longer period. The discovery of huge subspatial mass anomalies in the region of the triple stars had come late, and the intensity of Yabakra radiation had not there should be a yet in there, had not yet been foreseen. I'm going to rewrite this. The resulting interference completely ruled out subspace communications and all but the most concentrated tight beam radio signals. Mother. T'Prala turned as quickly as her suit and the low gravity allowed, facing her son, Radek. He was 5 years old, too young even for the most basic rituals of Vulcan maturity, Kadnifor.
Is that the one where they, like, leave them for dead and they have to, like, survive?
I don't remember. His expression was peaceful, contented. Mother, we know what Father has done. He motioned for her to follow, and they returned to the Black Box Nebula Station 1. There would be no further messages, and no answers, for at least 10 years. So that was the prologue.
Okay, so...
It's a lot of words.
It is a lot of words. So we've got...
And strange punctuation.
And strange punctuation, so...
They like their commas.
Respectfully, we're saying to Greg Bear that we have questions about the punctuation.
Yeah,
but...
and I'm dyslexic, and so making it sound very smooth is very difficult.
And I just have really bad ADHD, and I can't focus on anything. We were trying to read a plaque we were at the Fernbeg Museum, where the picture of Anton from the thumbnail comes from today. And I was trying to read. What was I trying to read?
Something about gravity.
It was something about gravity, and my brain was refusing to read anything other than graveyard. So it was like the space graveyard, and I was just like, "What does that mean?"
Because the word under that was in Spanish. It's gravidad.
Yeah, and so I think that was also not helping.
The font kind of looked like graveyard. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, so my brain was, what have you, but
Space graveyard.
Would you like to read the chapter 1?
Sure.
I'm letting you guys go first because I always read, so I'll take the every third turn.
Rowena Mason stood transfixed at the window of the personnel transport. She had spent her entire life on the small yellow-orange planet Yalbo, more known for its space dock facilities and mining colonies than its natural beauty. Yet now Yalbo, rotating slowly below, was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Banks of dusty yellow clouds drifted over the tan and pink Erling mineral massif, casting umber shadows across the rills and valleys where her family had labored for 3 generations. She had never been off-world before, and pictures could not compare with reality. The personnel transport rolled to face the huge orbiting space dock, a spiderweb delicate framework of thin cylindrical supports laced together by lateral beams. Huge banks of work lights were being switched off, and space dock work crews were withdrawing from the USS Enterprise. Mason had researched the Enterprise thoroughly after receiving her assignment. The first Constitution-class ship to be equipped with warp drive. On a continuing mission of research and exploration, she was easily the most famous ship in human history. The quarterdeck of the Enterprise seemed to be the only peaceful location on the ship. Officers and crew had already boarded. But stores were still being loaded through the shuttle bay, and preparations were being made for casting off. Rowena Mason stepped off the transport, uncertain as she walked through the passageway. At what moment she boarded the Enterprise. She was greeted by the officer of the deck in space dock, a shiny-faced junior lieutenant who, to Mason's relief, was quite human. Starfleet tended to group humanoid oxygen breathers together as crews to avoid expensive ship refitting. Non-humanoid types were grouped in various other categories.
Wait,
That seems xenophobic,
it seems like space racism.
but okay. Go off.
Is it more? Is it more like a resource thing?
It
Like,
sounds like that's what they're trying to say it
is
is.
it like,
but
oh,
I
it's
feel,
more of like an oxygen
I
thing?
feel like it's still xenophobic.
yeah.
like some like politician that was like xenophobic was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's for the oxygen.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oxygen.
Hello,
They-
Texas. Welcome. We're streaming a little early. Anton and Natasha are here with me. We are reading Star Trek Corona from 1984.
Different corona.
Different Corona.
It means crown in Latin.
Yes, non-humanoid types were grouped in various other categories aboard ships appropriate to their needs. Okay. She could not have met, say, Medusan. She had nightmares about them as a child. But she had but she was none too sure what she would do when she encountered a Vulcan or Andorran, both reputedly stationed aboard the Enterprise. She was glad for a brief reprieve. She presented her credentials to the OD, who smiled with formal courtesy and passed them through the security device mounted on one side of his podium. "Permission to come aboard?" she asked, unsure of the procedure. "Permission granted. Mr. Mason, welcome to the Enterprise." That was another thing she'd have to get used to. By calling her Mr., they were extending her courtesy usually reserved for officers, both male and female.
Okay, everybody's a mister.
That's pronouns? Is that pronoun inclusiveness? I don't
guess
know.
it's
Very early pronoun inclusiveness.
I guess it's like like a gender neutral term, so it can work for
Yeah, I
anybody.
guess it's like
Like MS.
getting a bachelor degree
Oh,
or getting a
yeah.
master's degree.
True.
Sorry, I'm getting cat hair out of my mug. Anyways,
Oh, I'm always
continue.
getting cat hair out of everything.
Flavorful.
Thank you. I'd like my arrival announced to the Federation News Service as soon as possible. And when do I meet the quartermaster? Quartermaster? I'm sorry. You must mean army usage. There is no quartermaster aboard the Enterprise. All quarters are allotted by the ship's computer. Your escort will meet you in a few minutes. You're a bit late, I know, Mason said. Only 6 hours before, she had been happily at work on her history of 22nd century approaches to quantum electrodynamics. Her major at the very small Yalbo University of Humanities. She had managed a fairly stiff curriculum despite her work as an FNS reporter. Mason's parents had disapproved of her academic pursuits, preferring that she immediately join her father in the Union Rare Earths Company as a filial apprentice. Her decision to continue at the university had resulted in their cutting off all support.
Oof.
She had gone to work as a stringer for the Federation News Service to keep off the despised student dole, and gradually worked her way up to a staff position, one of only 2 in Yalbo's FNS bureau. The other was held by her boss, a crusty ex-demolisher and closet philosopher named Evanric. Yalbo supplemented its mining income and kept its chronically idle mining engineers employed by serving the Federation as a repair and outfitting station. It was no small story when the Enterprise was ordered to put into space dock around Yalbo for new equipment installations. Mason had covered what aspects of the story she could from planetside when FNS had asked Evanric to release her for an off-planet assignment. She could have refused, but she had been sitting around calm and happy for entirely too long. She was, after all, a reporter. Wow, what a statement on journalism.
Whoa.
Right?
She's like, I'm too happy. I need a new job.
Yeah. Journalism?
Thought by no
It's a little
one ever.
too happy.
Also, Texas says she was 2. I think she means when this book came out in 1984.
Oh, okay. Reporters were supposed to be in the thick of things, not puttering on academic protests in the middle of nowhere. If FNS thought her small planet articles were good enough to merit such an assignment, and if she happened to be the only reporter in the vicinity other than Evanric, who adjudged himself too old and set in his ways, who was she to refuse? There may be some confusion at first, Mr. Mason, the OD said. We've spent 20 days undergoing repairs and refit, new installations. That's why I'm here, she said. To catch us while we're vulnerable? Ah, the military mind resenting the intrusion of the press.
What? Oh my god.
No, to report on the new monitors, observe the reaction of the crew, how the Enterprise behaves. She smiled. The junior lieutenant returned her smile. Such discipline, she thought sarcastically. He didn't exhibit a trace of masculine interest in this new addition to the ship's female population, correct and polite in every particular, except, of course, for that brief probe of her intentions. Mr. Mason? A woman asked. It took her a second to recognize her own name. She wondered if she would always assume someone was asking for her father. She turned and saw a dismaying beautiful woman in a red regulation uniform standing in the quarterdeck elevator. I'm Lieutenant Yuhara.
Oh, yeah, she's beautiful. Agreed.
His check and
Sorry.
start playing.
Anyways. Oh,
What
that was me.
Okay.
It was not a bottle of water.
Yeah.
Not a bottle of water.
How's it going? Hey, this is a great way to do book streams. You guys can take turns resting your voices. Yes, I think
Hey,
that.
Basilius. Yeah, we're all taking turns drinking and not like drinking alcohol, but just like drinking fluids and reading.
We're taking shots
Yeah.
every single time we can't pronounce a word.
Yeah.
Every
Oh yeah, this would be a very short stream.
we'd be gone. Anyways, hi.
Yeah, you got work tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I don't have to talk, so
Would you be able to stand?
probably.
I'm Lieutenant Yuhara, she said, stepping forward and offering her hand. Communications officer, Starfleet. Though since we'd been working together off and on, we might as well share quarters. Mason blinked. No wonder the OD hadn't shown any interest in her. Were all Starfleet women so depressingly exotically gorgeous?
All right, so Mason is bi icon confirmed.
And a little bit insecure, but aren't we all?
Yeah.
Maybe got it down bad.
Yeah.
Mason blinked. Oh, wait, I read that. Lieutenant Yuhara is your escort, Mr. Mason, the OD explained. Yes, I understand, thank you. She shook the communications officer's hand and followed her into the elevator. My luggage, it's coming through the shuttle bay, the OD said behind them. It's all taken care of. It better be, she said, half under her breath. There are 2 FNS mobile recorders, and if they're damaged, it'll take me 4 years to pay for them.
Good lord.
As the elevator door closed, Yuhara looked Mason over completely. Her smile seemed quite genuine, something of a contrast with the OD. You're going to do a story on the Enterprise new monitors? Partly. I'm also interested in the new medical equipment. Looks like we'll have quite a shakedown ahead of us. If we ever get to the shakedown, Starfleet keeps us busy, you know. Most of our training and shakedown cruises have turned into the real thing. I don't see any reason this time should be different. I'm not sure. I'm ready for a real adventure, Mason admitted. She could look forward to being a nice, safe bit of investigative reporting, but life among mining engineers had taught her that adventure was a euphemism for serious injury or death.
I mean, she's not wrong
not
a lot of the time.
Not wrong.
No worries, Basilius. We'll see you later. I always have the VODs up. It's just like a video that we record live, and then people come back and watch.
We're doing it live.
That way you can fast forward through us if you want to.
The hell?
An early stream?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're streaming. I've got Anton. Well, I've got Natasha and Anton with
Yeah, we're
me.
gonna switch names just for the stream.
Yeah, and so we streamed a little early so that everybody could be present for Star Trek Corona, since it's Natasha's book that she has graciously loaned me for almost a year and a half now. And Anton is also very interested in this, in reading this, and we were always thinking, like, how are we gonna do this, like, all together? And then we happened to all be together, so.
I wonder why you picked this book. I should have called in sick today, haha.
Oh, no.
No, I think you're good.
Don't let us distract
Yeah.
you.
Let's not get you fired.
It's probably not that good. I'm just gonna put that out there right now.
Later.
Yeah, you can watch the VOD.
Yeah.
If an emergency comes up, I will be put off to at an outpost, or if an emergency comes up, will I be put off at an outpost post or starbase? Not on your life. The captain will make sure you're with us every step of the way. If Starfleet wants monitors and the Federation wants press coverage, they'll have both. And he won't blink an eye or complain once, or let them off the hook. You'll see. You could write a whole book just about Captain Kirk. You seem to admire him. Seem? Honey, he's the captain.
Honey. Honey.
He's the captain.
Seem? I don't think there's a man or woman on board who wouldn't follow him down the mouth of a naked singularity.
Sorry. Natasha just had, like, the most concerned. Natasha had the most "this is sus" look.
Anyways.
And you progress on script.
Oh, no, not yet.
Good lord, I have to be there at 7:15. Gross.
Glad we're streaming early.
And how does he feel about the press? I don't think the questions ever come up. At any rate, I'm happy to see you. They've upped my quarters allowance and lowered my mess bill just to show you around, duty permitting, and I've already worked my way up to the best quarters in junior officers' country. Plenty of room for two, privacy even. Sounds like a luxury cruise. Uhura shook her head. Like I said, Mr. Mason. Rowena, please. Rowena, like I said. I don't think there will be much time for luxury. Ship's quarters, junior officers' sector, the elevator announced. The doors opened with a weep, and revealing a stark white and gray corridor with impressively massive bulkheads outlined in red. Welcome home, honey, Uhura said, leading the way.
Very nice.
Chapter 2.
It does read like a fan fiction.
It does read like a fanfiction.
It's read like a fan fiction with no beta reader.
Yeah.
It's missing.
The narrator is just like really like providing a lot of like emotive weight. It's just like
we don't care.
What's going on?
We want to see who's the big bad person is. Like, we don't care about how attractive Uhura is. She's a beautiful
She's
woman.
obviously gorgeous.
She's obviously gorgeous. Like, without saying.
Alright. Chapter 3.
2.
Or 2, sorry. We read a prologue, so now it's like, you know when, like, the weekend is 3 days long, and then you're like, oh, I now screwed up on what day we're on.
Yeah, my Tuesday's my Monday now.
Alright, so chapter 2. Jim, I swear, if I'd wanted to be a lawyer, I'd have gone to Tharsis University and transferred to Starfleet Internal Affairs. Dr. Leonard McCoy pulled all the homey lines of his face into an exaggerated scowl and shook his head. 10,000 new rules and regulations. It's just a watchdog, Bones. I feel more out of my element every year. First they change my tools, then they tell me the computers can run surgery better. And what's that make me? An electrician? And now they say that a Starship Medical Center has, he assumed an air of great dignity and self-importance, has a potential for social disruption. His eyes protruded slightly, and he stared at Captain James T. Kirk, demanding a response. Kirk's look of sudden humor and mildness was almost equally exaggerated. It's all part of the new Federation monitors. They just don't want to become a god, Bones. They just don't want you to become a god, Bones. McCoy's explosion of breath showed he didn't appreciate his friend's humor. Kirk walked between the banks of equipment in the space dock. I think I skipped. I skipped 2 lines. In the rebuilt medical center, Starfleet had shipped the transporter emergency recovery unit, sorry, not until, the Yalbo space dock, months before the Enterprise had finished her last mission, along with the command and medical monitors. If I'm going to have a Federation programmed watchdog system breathing down my neck, why should you get off, with our chief engineer's pardon, scot-free? He stopped, turning to look at McCoy, and gestured to a man-sized cylindrical vat filled with transparent green fluid. If it's any comfort to you, I find it all a bit much myself. This? He shook his head. In my day, the new TEREC would have been called a miracle. But now, if there's a transporter accident, you, Bones, good old country doctor, you can direct the last memory bank impression of a transporter passenger into the machine, and a virtually exact duplicate can be recreated. No more transporter deaths, Bones. It could be a damned nightmare. Bones is not happy.
Bones is a mood all the time.
Yeah, he is. Yes, indeed. A mad doctor could ransack the memory banks of for impressions of passengers, combine them, run them through the TEREC. I don't know if that's pronounced Terek or not. And create entirely new people. So we have a medical monitors and the new regs. Kirk knew all too well that McCoy was simply blowing off steam. McCoy's pretended distaste for new medical equipment, new techniques for saving lives and preventing misery, was a front, behind which the doctor carefully adjusted all his past medical experiences. Kirk played along with the theatrics, but not without having some fun of his own. Why, without the new regs, you could make your own nurse, Bones. She would be sexist, McCoy accused. She, Kirk reiterated. He's like, why are you assuming that it's a woman, huh? Kirk, it could be a dude nurse. Those exist. She, Kirk reiterated, would be about 5'10", an excellent physical specimen, brainy, and as obedient as Tau Satane?
I feel like that's not a good thing.
No, this definitely feels like fanfiction now. Fawnbird, and when you were done creating her, you'd promptly marry her, and Starfleet would lose its best ship doctor. Jeez, Kirk. Give him a break, a little bit. McCoy seemed about to either laugh, become all apoplectic, thank you, I can never say that, or prepare a lengthy defense when the comm chimed and Kirk answered. Quarterdeck to quarterdeck to Captain Kirk. Wellman, Captain, Mr. Mason is aboard and all her equipment is stowed. Why should that concern you, Jim? McCoy asked, puzzled. Thank you, Mr. Wellman, Kirk replied to the OD. You may secure the quarterdeck and resume your space duties. Kirk drew up the right corner of his mouth ruefully. We have a member of the Fourth Estate aboard the Enterprise. Bones, we are now under surveillance. Watch your language. I'm a Southern gallant from way back, McCoy said. She's here to see how we react to the monitors, and I understand she wants to do a story on the new sickbay. I have nothing to hide, McCoy said, making a magnanimous, thank you, sweep with his arm, except my doubts. Kirk toggled the intercom switch. Lieutenant Uhura's quarters, he instructed the unit. Leave a message. I request the company of Mr. Mason. No, make that Miss Mason, at the captain's table, in the officers' mess, this evening for dinner. Extend my compliments. He's like, we'll acknowledge her womanhood, I guess.
This is definitely woman written by man syndrome.
I mean, maybe this is like the beginning of a character arc within a single book.
I hope so.
Quite the gallant yourself, eh, Jim? McCoy's grin was almost indetectable.
But yeah, right now he doesn't pass the vibe check yet.
No, but Kirk usually isn't sexist. Kirk generally is not sexist.
Not really. It's not supposed to be.
Not supposed to be, anyway.
Nope.
Hi, Milo. Welcome.
3-person stream.
3-person stream. We're doing a
3-person
thing.
in-person
Surprise. 3-person surprise in-person stream.
Alrighty. Chapter 3.
Yo.
The Enterprise's crew facilities were clean, comfortable, and slightly worn-looking. Past refittings had concentrated on updating equipment and not redecoration. Lieutenant Uhura's quarters were a notable exception. They were richly, tastefully decorated with hanging fabrics, a non-regulation assortment of pillow couches, and the Oxford Common. Great, guys.
It's
And
hard, right? Yeah.
A chair made especially for extremely sensitive skin of a Deltan. A chair which was a sheer heaven for a human. Sculptures ranging in size from a few centimeters to 1 meter betrayed Uhura's particular obsession, collecting surrealistic and totemistic modern African ebony carvings. Mason had settled into Uhura's cabin, looked over the diagrams of the ship Uhura brought up on the room's video display and received the invitation to the captain's table for dinner. There was little time for anything beyond a quick cleanup. She greatly appreciated the Enterprise's lavatory facilities. They were perhaps 10 years more modern than the general run of bathrooms on Yalbo. She wondered how she'd adjust when they returned to her home. Perhaps, and it was just an idle fantasy, perhaps this story would be her ticket to better things. In the officers' mess, she seated herself at the end of the 6th-place table, where her name was illuminated in ghostly green beside a setting of ship's stainless and dimpled plastic plate. It wasn't her style to be early, but she had miscalculated the time it would take her to get to the mess. The elevator, also called a turbo lift, she reminded herself, was very fast. A few minutes later, officers began to come in. From the pictures Uhura had shown her, she recognized the chief engineer, Scott, the chief helmsman, Sulu, the science and first officer, Spock, and the computer officer in charge of the monitors, Veblen?
Sure.
I don't know. Let's just decide on one.
Veblen. I'm going to go with Veblen.
Okay.
Seated at another table was an Endoran lieutenant, an expert in navigation and like many of his race. The sight of the Endoran and Spock made her stiffen. So she's xenophobic too. Cool.
Oh.
There were no aliens in Yalbo, only humans. Okay. Let's see. No indigenous life forms, no visitors or advisors or tourists. She had heard stories from her mother and father about aliens carrying strange diseases, preaching strange and perverse philosophies, and while she had rejected much of that during her years in school, enough of it had taken to make her uneasy.
Oh no. Oh no.
Wow.
I'm going to give them I'm going to assume that because this is Star Trek, and their whole thing was like, inclusivity.
Yeah.
This character is going to learn how wrong they are for being
Well, Greg,
xenophobic.
we're 20 pages in, and you already get 2 stars out of 5 from me.
By the way, Cameron Jim says about Kirk, it's not sexist. He just likes sex.
He's just got a thing for women, and he wants to make sure that you know that it's specifically for women.
There was, first and foremost, Spock's severe handsomeness and his ears. Oh, it's getting worse. The color of his skin, a warm, light brownish green, was disconcerting, but not that unusual. She had met humans from other... Is she going to bang him by the time this is over? Let's see. She had met humans from other star systems who hadn't looked much different, but she knew. He was half human, ... half Vulcan.
Which character is this, by the way?
I want Spock.
No, but who's thinking?
This is the main lady.
Mason.
This is Mason. Okay. I just wanted to know who to direct my...
Your ire to?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Texas says, oh my.
And he was seating himself at the same table in the seat next to Kirk's on the right, directly across from her. Oh. While she examined Spock, Scott sat on her left. To Spock's right was a stocky, boyish-looking lieutenant who introduced himself as Jan Veblen. Next came Dr. Leonard McCoy. McCoy sat at the end opposite Kirk's place, greeting her with a nod and a warm smile. "Welcome aboard," he said. She took to McCoy right away. He reminded her of her father, or rather, of her father on one of his better days. "I hope you're finding everything to your satisfaction." "I haven't been aboard very long," she said. "It seems fine." "The food here is quite tasty," McCoy said, "but I wouldn't order whatever Mr. Spock is having." Spock surveyed Mason coolly. "Dr. McCoy is well aware I take my meals in my quarters. I am here purely for the social aspects of dinner with one's fellow officers." Spock is a very social fellow, McCoy added. Spock raised one eyebrow but said nothing more until the arrival of the captain. As Kirk approached the table, everyone in the mess rose. She slowly followed suit. Kirk approached her and held out his hand. On behalf of the officers and crew, may I extend a formal welcome aboard the Enterprise? My pleasure, she said. Kirk was roguishly handsome, perhaps 45 or slightly older. He seemed fit and looked perhaps 8 years younger. What is the math on that?
I don't know. Is Kirk supposed to be this like the Mary Sue?
I mean, they're usually.
Greg Bear.
I think the joke is that
It's a
because Mary
self-insert?
Sue comes
Yeah.
from Star Trek universe and like the
Yeah.
fan fiction there,
Yeah.
but Kirk is like the guy that everybody's got a crush on.
Star Trek, more like Star Wreck.
Ha ha ha.
Can't wait for Christmas.
That was me having a seizure trying to wink at you guys. All right, let's see. The rest of the officers resumed their seats, and a mechanical steward began carrying a column of stacked plates from table to table, starting with theirs. Tonight, McCoy said, we have the boon of the ship's best New Orleans chicken gumbo, one of my favorites, if I must choose. We regret not having the time to visit your planet or allow any sort of liberty, Kirk said. We've been quite pressed. Our last mission was a difficult one, and we'd have enjoyed the time off. Well, there's not really that much on Yalbo, she said. She so hated that name. I also hate that name. As a girl, she had called it Yellow, which at least had the virtue of being descriptive. For tourists or visitors, I mean. Just very... I can't do a Scottish accent, but I'm going to try. Just
believe
very fine...
I believe in you.
dry dock facilities.
I believe in
I don't
you.
know what that was. Scott said enthusiastically. Yes, well, we're just about the only space dock for 100 parsecs. I imagine that's why you were instructed to come here. Kirk nodded. How long have you been a reporter? 3 years. On staff, that is. I'm also finishing my doctorate at Yalbo University of the Humanities. That sounds so provincial, she thought.
Cameron says Star Trek.
I'm trying, guys. I'm dyslexia. I can't read very well.
Donkey.
Don't get. Okay, the only F&S reporter on Yalbo, McCoy ventured. There's my boss, she said. His name's Evan Rick. He used to be, she hesitated. He's a very good reporter. He used to be a demolisher. Ran a B&B machine. Boring and blasting. He's my taskmaster here. I mean, on Yalbo. He taught me most of what I know. We plan to spend a week on Shakedown, Kirk said, though I imagine Mr. Scott would rather we spend a month. A week should do it this time, Captain. Taking a spoonful of the savory.
So glad I didn't have a mouthful of tea. That would have been an actual mistake.
They didn't tear the guts out of her and make us stuff them back in, only a minor modification. I can't wait till you guys have to do Scotty. Minor if you stayed out of sickbay for 3 weeks, McCoy said. I assume you were briefed on what's happened to the Enterprise, Kirk said. I was given an outline. I'm here to fill in the rest. Perhaps Mr. Veblen could help, Spock said. Before him on the table was a carafe of cloudy water. He poured a glassful and sipped it reflectively. Certainly, Veblen said. He was a short, chunky man with blonde hair cut shorter than regulation length, a bulbous nose, and a penetrating, elfishly upslanted green eyes.
That was more description than I needed, but all right.
He had come aboard the Enterprise the year before to coordinate the upcoming monitor installation, serving first as Spock's assistant and chief computer officer. Though Veblen didn't look like the most representative Starfleet Academy graduate, Kirk had come to respect him, grudgingly, and with a healthy list of reservations. Whose point of view is this from? It was from What's-Her-Face, and now
But
it's
now-
Kirk.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
switched. I don't know when it switched, but
just-
it switched.
Just then.
Just to serve Greg's.
Yeah.
Ever-changing
Good,
whims.
good job, Greg.
Texas says channel Uncle Scrooge.
I'm going to channel all of the characters at the same time, guys. You're just not going to be ready for it. The Enterprise is now outfitted with a Federation monitoring system. The Federation has been worried for years about the power of Starfleet vessels and the possibilities of gross misuse, and not without justification. Even within the captain's expertise, as I've learned. There have been safeguards in the past, but nothing like these. The monitors are planned to eventually oversee all of the ship's operations. For this voyage, there are 2 basic systems, Command, the largest, and Medical, to oversee the new TEREC. Tarek, Mason asked. Transporter Emergency Recovery Unit, McCoy explained. It's literally recovery. If and when the monitors decide that a Starfleet vessel is operating in a manner not beneficial to the Federation's interests, Veblen continued, they will take over until the situation has been normalized or until Enterprise has withdrawn from the difficulties. The command monitors contain the experienced memories of 6 past Starfleet commanders whom the Federation regarded as superior in all categories. So we're doing an AI now. This is like robots take over the universe.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome.
ChatGPT.
Love it. These surrogates are now machine combinatorial personalities checking and rechecking with each other. Bridge to Captain Kirk. Uhura here, Captain. We have an urgent message from Starfleet. Is there any other kind? McCoy grumbled. They request an immediate answer. I'll be right up, Lieutenant. He pushed his chair back from the table. Excuse the interruption. Please proceed. Mason felt a little shiver of anticipation. Are her breasts gonna like peek up like this? I feel like this is definitely a female written by the male gaze.
Yeah.
They can't leave us alone even for the space of a good meal, McCoy said, shaking his
I think you just took a year off of Anton's life. I'm so sorry. You know those like men writing women posts where like they just, like horribly.
Yeah, I've seen one where it's like, obviously it's like been exaggerated, but it's like, oh, she jogged tittingly down the stairs.
I mean, that tittingly is that's a good word.
Yeah.
Or like
Usable.
when the anime characters like their breasts bounce, like
Yeah.
it's just
It's disturbing. Yeah.
it hurts. Ow, it's painful. That's attached to
she
you, guys.
she rested.
She And Cameron, by the way, says, "Get out of my swamp."
Where's Vincent when you need?
You guys are gonna love my Scotty by the end. It's not gonna be anything like Scotty is supposed to be.
Oh, I love your Scotty. Now, here, I'll hold on to this.
Okay, I'm gonna have to it's gonna be angled.
It's good.
In the time it took Kirk to reach the bridge, less than 2 minutes, Uhura, is it Uhura?
It's Uhura.
Uhura.
But I mean, you can say it either way. People say it all the different ways.
Uhura had a heads-up projector ready, aimed at the captain's chair, and scrambled channels on subspace open for his reply. Kirk took his seat. In less than a second, he was deep into the dispatch, the heads-up display projecting an image into his eyes alone, and bone-resonance speakers in his neck brace fed him audio. Oh gosh. Unex Ter High Pri message. Relay Starbase 19. Captain James T. Kirk only. Kirk. He recognized the voice of Admiral Hiram Kawakami, in charge of Starfleet's Bureau of Unexplored Territory. Captain, we've received a status geometry message from Octant 7, Black Box Nebula Station 1. It took 10 years for that message to reach the nearest Federation automatic relay buoy. I thought the Black Box Station had been written off years ago, Kirk muttered. The message is partly visual. Here it is, Jim. A strong-featured Vulcan face with the deeper greenish tan cast, common to a purebred member of one of the old families.
Purebred member. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
I don't like the way they. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. Appeared before him, surrounded by what looked like an orderly communication center aboard a slightly underfunded research station. The display identified the Vulcan in bright red letters as Grake, a physicist, husband to Pryla. Pryla was well known, one of the finest Vulcan physicists, and Jim believed related in some way to his own science officer, though precisely how he couldn't remember. Vulcan family ties could be very complicated.
I don't know.
What does it matter? Anyways, go ahead.
Sorry.
By the way, do correct me if I don't get the.
Actually,
I'm
don't.
gonna get it wrong.
I'm gonna get him wrong too.
Oh, okay.
So we're just have
We're
blanket.
just gonna-
Do not correct me because I will not. I can't see anything.
We're
so I'm
doing
gonna
the best
ignore
that we can.
Greg was speaking High Vulcan, which the language implant at the base of Kirk's skull translated, matching Greg's intonations perfectly. Had we not a strong suspicion of something amiss, we would not be sending this preliminary message. With 3 protostars entering this main sequence within the Black Box Nebula, all subspace communications has been disrupted. Nevertheless, the signal faded, and Kawakami's voice returned. We have high-speed equipment transmission along with the interrupted visual. Science channel on that MC is very interesting. We now have a great deal more information on which to base our opinion of the ultimate fate of the Black Box station. Switch to high-speed ingest, Captain. Kirk mentally adjusted his implant. His mind was immediately flooded with more information. He cringed slightly. In some ways, he was more afraid of technology than McCoy, especially technology which messed with the inside of his head.
It was inside your head, dude.
The ache left by high-speed information absorption didn't endear the process to him. Nevertheless, in a few seconds, he was able to sort out the black keys. The key facts. Sorry, I've read the next line.
I did that too. It's tiny print.
The conversion of the Black Box Nebula from a dark cloud to a star womb had not been sufficiently violent to destroy the research station. The sudden silencing of the station and the fusion ignition of the infant stars had inevitably been associated. Failure to re-establish contact with had led Starfleet to send an unmanned rescue vessel to the nebula. When it disappeared without a trace, Starfleet deemed it unadvisable to mount a full-scale rescue mission, a decision Kirk personally had disagreed with. Still, he disliked second-guessing his superiors. Greg's message was incomplete, but from his tone and manner, it seemed reasonable to assume that most of the station personnel, if not all, had survived. That's a lot of assumption there.
Yeah,
Hang on,
because
we've got
10 years ago, but that's fine.
we've got a. I'm dealing with a bot. Sorry,
Oh.
guys. Continue. Free virtual girls, huh?
Whoa.
They
How
hurt the
could-
boobies.
Yeah.
Not now, Sex Chat 69, Milo says.
Not now. We're in the middle of something.
there are singles in our area, though.
They can wait.
Still, there were unexplained problems after the protostar ignition had run its course. The station should have been able to use subspace. While there was a reference to high levels of Yabakara radiation in the science data, that couldn't interfere with subspace unless there were previously uncharted subspatial mass anomalies in the area. It appeared the science data was incomplete as well. Captain, most of the personnel aboard the station were kept in deep freeze. Our physicists say there's a strong possibility that Yabakara radiation from the vicinity of the collapsed protostars has degraded the myelin sheathing on the nerves of all frozen sleepers, quote unquote. ... And the Enterprise is the only starship presently equipped to deal with such a medical emergency. Emergency! Not much of an emergency after 10 years, Kirk thought. Still, if the sleepers had been revived... ... Your orders are to proceed to the black box at maximum warp, relieve survivors, if any, and do a complete procedural and scientific investigation. All prior assignments are postponed. The Romulus and Kshatriyans... Oh, that's...
I don't know how to say that either. That looks good.
And that's...
Sure.
1 second.
We're
letting the cat in. Perry has
Perry.
demanded to come in.
Perry.
Perry!
Perry. Perry.
The quack.
Perry. Hi.
Sorry, continue.
She's chilling.
Hi.
We're here. We're here.
Come here, Betty.
She'll come in when she feels like it.
Hi, girl. How are you?
Hi, Perry.
We were in the middle of a book.
No? Okay. Alright.
Oh, Pep. I just called her Pep.
It starts with a P.
It does.
Close enough.
Pep is my cat, by the way. But
Yay.
anyways.
Oh, okay. Kshatriyans have given permission for Enterprise to cross neutral zones in their vicinity up to stardate 438.6, after which time Enterprise will be regarded as hostile and fired upon.
Oh,
Ow.
gosh.
You only got a little bit of time. Cutting it close, Kirk thought. Even at warp 11 maximum, without giving Scotty severe angina, would take them 2 weeks to cross the galaxy into Octant 7. Representatives from the Vulcan Spyorna have made their concern quite clear. T'Pryla is an extremely valuable Vulcan, Jim, even if something of a renegade. The Admiral gave his formal sign-off as Kirk ordered all senior watch officers to the briefing room. He suggested Mason should be present. Mr. Sulu to the bridge, he concluded, and rig for prolonged warp maximum. Mason took a seat in the corner of the room, watching the officers file in and making notes about their physical appearance and apparent mental states. Okay. One of the 2 FNS mobile recorders as assigned to her for the story floated beside her, sensors and lenses extended. The recorder was an older model, a flat rectangular prism about 50 centimeters long and 20 wide. When the senior watch officers had absorbed the information from the transmission, they sat attentively around the consoles and briefing table.
Good Lord, Perry.
So Cameron says full screen if Perry comes in, which
Well-
he has not jumped up, and then Texas says, "Oh, glorious one, grace us with your presence," and then Milo says, "Listen, we can't start a Perry cult in the chat." I mean, you can. It's ill-advised, but anything is possible, you know.
Well, apparently she just wanted to scream at us and then leave.
Yeah,
so.
she just wanted to check, be like, "What are you doing?" and then leave.
When the senior watch officers had absorbed the information from the transmission, they sat attentively around the consoles and briefing table. Spock had lifted one eyebrow, seemingly for good, and intently examined a science display. McCoy made notes on his electronic scratch pad, while Scotty, as much as Kirk had expected, shook his head and muttered. Any comments, gentlemen? Kirk asked. Captain, Scott began. I am aware of condition of engineering, Mr. Scott, Kirk said, then softening. But I would appreciate an update. Okay, let's do this.
Oh God,
I was... oh, God.
It's
I
hard.
believe you. I believe in you.
I was not expecting a prolonged warp maximum, Captain. In with our time in space dock, we need at least a day at warp 2 for Jeffrey's refits, or we could blow an entire bus in bottle 7. I've been nursing that one along until we could log travel time. It cannot be done stationary. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Where will we be when the refit becomes necessary? Scott looked distinctly uncomfortable. We are at 17 days from the black box at maximum warp. If we all go out for the first part of our trip, which we will, Kirk said, then we'll be right in the middle of the Trian neutral zone. Do what you can now. I'll give you 4 hours at warp 2. We won't have the luxury after. Scott knew better than to offer further argument. He nodded and stared darkly at his work forms. McCoy was next. The crew has been ridden hard, Jim. Our last mission was no piece of cake. Even with a month in dry dock, we haven't had opportunity for liberty. So what can we do about it, Bones? McCoy shrugged. Keep a stiff upper lip, as usual? Can we handle it? Of course we can, but that's all I need to know, Mr. Spock. You're looking pensive. Spock glanced up, eyebrow still raised. The captain must be aware that I am a blood relative of T'Pryla. Yes, I'd like that clarified, Spock. She is my father's second brother's daughter by his fourth Trilia marriage.
So probably not blood related, but it's cool. Anyways, continue.
She is married to a former pupil of my first discipline master. The situation presents an interesting dilemma, Captain. Oh my goodness.
You don't have to let her in. You can just
She's
keep
just
reading.
gonna keep scratching.
Just keep going. We just ignore her. She's not the boss of us. Or she's not supposed to be.
She is anyway.
Mm-hmm.
This situation presents an interesting dilemma, Captain. By now, both Taprila and Greg have been ceremonially interested and their social positions refilled. If they are alive, they will have to compete for a new social position. Were they mourned, Spock? McCoy asked sarcastically. Spock raised his other eyebrow. That is not the dilemma. Why? Why should like the Rock,
Yeah.
the Spock, Dwayne the Spock Johnson?
Yep.
That is not the dilemma. Why should the Spyorna have any further interest in a Vulcan? They have officially decreed to be Axpra, the follower of an inadequate philosophy. It is my guess the Spyorna is about to recognize Taprila's kind of logic as useful. This could be very important to Vulcans, Captain, more so if she is still alive and can guide us in our progress.
This is who the prologue was about. Okay, sorry to
Okay.
interrupt.
No.
Agreed.
That's very interesting, Spock. But I'm really interested in your assessment of the difficulties involved in reaching the station. Spock assented with a nod to one side. The Black Box Nebula is one of 700 collapsing nebula accessible to us, Captain. It is by far the largest and most complex, principally because of the extreme turbidity within the nebula proper. The three newly created stars are likely to become hot, middle-sized B-class stars if, as surmised, there are subspatial mass anomalies nearby. In their early years, they will have released a tremendous amount of Yubakara radiation. Such radiation operates in a fractional space and is not dangerous to normal carbon-based life forms, unless they are in frozen state associated with suspended animation. Bodily defenses are then incapable of making the minute, but constant repairs necessary to the myelin sheaths, which act as insulation in both human and Vulcan nerves. Which is where I come in, McCoy said. If the sleepers haven't been revived, the new equipment in the sickbay might be able to save them. But there's a problem, Jim. Was that all, Spock? Mason sat quietly in the corner, and noting the style of the meeting, and the often informal give and take between Kirk and the officers. No, Captain, Spock said, unperturbed. We know very little about protostar formations of this sort, and the silencing of the station in the black box. There have been no updates until now. The information relayed by the buoy is incomplete and highly inadequate. In short, the Enterprise will be entering unknown conditions with unknown consequences. Yet again, McCoy said, how cheering. You mentioned a problem, Doctor? The equipment. It's easy enough to operate, even with the guidelines of the guidelines of the monitors. It practically runs itself, but I don't think Starfleet has taken the monitors into account in evaluating this situation. The best way I can figure out to save the sleepers is to beam them up frozen, rescue the transient form memories from the transporter, and then feed them into the vat 2 by 2. Mr. Veblen here will tell you the difficulties involved with computer storage of transient form memories. Enormous difficulties, Captain. Lieutenant Veblen said. Such as, Mr. Veblen? Transient form memories are stored by a kind of quantum trick, Captain. There are well over 150 million gigabytes of information needed to store one human body after beaming. That's actually not that much.
No.
For a whole
big.
human
In the
body?
80s, in the 80s, I guess. it
Yeah,
was.
that's a lot in the 80s. I mean, the thing we're recording on has more.
Yeah, it is.
For shame.
All of that is kept in fraction space storage for less than 5 minutes. It then deteriorates. Any attempt to rebeam from a deteriorated form memory is disastrous. Until now, there were no facilities to provide a medical backup for restoration with the failure of a transporter. Kirk tapped his fingers on the table. Veblen saw, and swallowed back his expanding explanation. Sir, we can store the memory of 6 transporter malfunction victims, but we only have the facilities to rebuild 2 at a time. To store any more, we'll have to use the ship's computer memory, which operates on a different process entirely. If there are 30 sleepers on the station, we could put 2 of them per week into the Terek. That would take 15 weeks, which would mean we would have to stay in orbit around the planetoid for at least the time necessary to retrieve all the sleepers, or we could dump the entire Enterprise library to store the 4 memories. Against regulations, Mr. Veblen, precisely. Why not beam them up frozen, then beam each into the unit as the time comes? There's the rub, Jim, McCoy says. With radiation damage, we can only risk transporting them once. The second time, they're dead. Was that the problem with the regs you mentioned? No. Even if we do get them up here, we'll have to program changes into the vats to restore their myelin sheaths. The monitor may not let me do that. I told you I wasn't sure the regs made much sense. You told me you didn't want to be a lawyer. Is there any reason we can't ferry the sleepers up into the shuttlecraft? There could be risks, McCoy said. Hibernacula require very stable power sources and constant low temperatures. We may have to take the chance, but I wish we had other choices. Gentlemen, is there anything further I should know before we begin our rescue mission? Very likely, Captain. There are a great many things you should know, Spock said. None of which we are able to tell you. Mason made a note of all that as well and underlined it twice. Captain, she said as the officers stood to return to their duties. Since this is such an unusual mission, am I to be dropped off on my planet before you depart? Kirk hardly looked at her as he passed. Not unless you directly request it. She watched him follow Spock out of the briefing room door, mentally kicking herself. She couldn't back down now. That man was so arrogant. Why couldn't he have made it easier on her, instead of throwing the ball in her court? She'd show herself to be a complete coward, and if she did come back to Yalbo, word would get around, ... and she would be accused of shaming them all, in front of humans too, or in front of non-humans too. She gripped her notepad tightly, chewing on her lower lip and trying to still the nagging voice in the back of her mind, a voice saying she was too young, too inexperienced, saying that FNS had made a bad mistake sending her to the Enterprise.
Oh, by the way, does anybody like my mug? I just got it. We went to the Fernbeck Museum, and it's like a planetary mug, and when it gets hot, it shows you like all of these it
Facts.
It shows you a bunch of facts about the solar system. It's really cool.
Facts.
Just to keep everybody up to date on what's happening in chat. Sorry, I just elbowed you.
No, you didn't. You elbowed somebody, but it wasn't me.
Oh, it was probably this.
Yeah.
That feels no pain. It's fine. You guys both have really pleasant voices for reading. I think that's great.
Well, so do you.
Well, thank you. Okay, so
How was my Scottish accent?
Your Scottish accent was amazing, actually.
I loved it. So about
I was going David Tennant.
I need to go David Tennant next time. I need to stop overthinking it.
So about starting a cult for Perry. Texas CK says L. Ron Hubbard says otherwise. Think of the money there's to be made. And then I had to kick out another Sex Chat 69 bot. So Texas said again with the sex bots. And then Clumpson said Scotty could get out and push ? Referring to when they were worried about the ship. And then where was I? Oh, Cameron says, fun fact, long ago there was a
Pythine relatives, baboons, etc., called Paradolicopichus.
That's a lot of syllables.
Yeah.
Which is notable in the remains suggests a convergence of uprightness with our ancestor
Australopithecus.
Australopithecus. We were actually just at the Fernbeck Museum of Natural History. And so we saw a lot of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about you, Cameron.
I kept making the joke like, welcome to Cretaceous Park.
Columbus said the author of this book is Spock. Yep. And then responded and said, oh, the author is a bear called Greg. That's unexpected. And then Clump says, I want that mug. Do I have to mug you for it? Thank you, Clump. Please don't mug me. And then Cameron says, I think you should keep the screen full because it seems little use for an overhead shot. I mean, it's good sometimes to create the cozy vibe when I'm by myself, but it's, I think, a little bit hard for everybody to kind of be
I guess
under, so...
It's hard because, Yeah.
So yeah, we can go to full.
You want to stay at a full.
We could stay at full screen, and that way nobody has to be like leaning over and being like, "Here, guys, can you see the book?" All right, so chapter 5. Kirk was eternally fascinated by the procedures for making an Enterprise ship shape for a long voyage. Making the Enterprise ship shape for a long voyage. He was as familiar with every action as a man watching his wife dress in the morning.
Oh.
Oh. Yeah.
What a description.
What a way to describe that.
I don't like Greg Bear. 0 out of 5 stars.
I have questions about Greg Bear and his writing of women.
Of everyone. But especially women.
And yet it had the same sort of fascination of responsibility mixed with a perverse and impossible kind of ownership. Gregory.
Get worse.
Gregory Bear.
Gregory Bear. It sounds like it's a nickname. Gregory Bear. Greggy Bear.
Greggy Bear. Greggy.
Oh, apparently I looked green screened in.
Oh, it's just because of the way the light is hitting you, I think.
Yeah.
You have like an unnaturalistic halo.
Maybe it's like maybe there's like a slight green hue to
This is very r/men writing women. Someone needs to put this on there
Yeah.
if they haven't already.
Just like copy and paste the entire book.
Yeah.
You don't even have to get specific
No, just whole book.
sections.
No individual could own a starship any more than a man could actually own his wife.
I mean, at least Gregory knew that.
But he says actually. You know, we feel like we own you guys, but like we know you guys have rights and stuff.
Rights. Women's rights.
Still, the Enterprise was his. He wondered what the day would be like when he had to give her up, and whether, if any of his Starfleet colleagues assumed her command, they could possibly remain friends. From the captain's chair, he watched preparations on the various display accessible to him, the largest being the forward viewing screen. At the touch of his fingers resting on buttons set into his chair arms, and at the sound of his voice, he could make the Enterprise come alive. Stroking, ... Just gonna continue on. He put such errant nonsense from his thoughts, and a good thing neither Spock nor McCoy could read minds at a distance. Can either of them read minds? Can Spock read minds?
Only when he's touching. He's a touch telepath.
Okay. And concentrated on a report from Scott. The preventative maintenance procedures had been completed in record time, though they would still need 4 hours at warp 2 for the Jeffries refit. That was a lot of words.
That was a lot of words.
Scott had suggested that 3 of his engineering crew receive notes of commendation. Kirk composed the notes on his command console and directed that they be entered into the ship's record and individual crew files. Scott's recommendations were as good as gold as far as he was concerned. The Andorian Lieutenant Yamasa...
It's the blue people.
Okay. Came on the bridge and took his position in the navigator's chair. The Enterprise is responsive, Captain, Sulu said, turning the grin at Kirk. I don't know if Sulu is actually that chipper, but that's
He's pretty chipper.
Okay, I took a shot. Yes, indeed, Kirk said. His crew should have been on the edge, exhausted, ready for at least a month of shore leave. Yet here they were, seemingly eager, almost chipper. There we go. Thanks, Greg, for backing me up that one time.
You're so gross, Greg.
For everything else.
For everything else, but thanks for saying chipper. He felt a flood of warmth behind his eyes and blinked the emotion back. Fix your bearings, Mr. Sulu, Mr. Yamasa. Await my command to exit space dock. Bearings fixed, Captain. McCoy stepped up behind Kirk's chair and laid hands on his shoulder. Jim, he said softly, I want to talk to you about Mason Girl. What about her? Are you sure it's Best Bones? She's a professional. Besides, Starfleet ordered that we should cooperate with the FNS. Jim, she's an outposter. She wouldn't know her way around a small town, much less the Enterprise on an emergency rescue mission. I don't foresee any danger, do you, Bones? Even every time we go someplace, there's that potential. Every time they go someplace, they almost die.
Yeah.
True enough. What makes you think she can't handle herself? Instinct. I may be wrong, but she just doesn't look comfortable. Have you seen the way she looks at Spock and Yamasa? There are no non-humans on Yalbo. They may be the first she's ever seen. We can excuse her racism for now, is what he's saying.
Can
I
we, though?
I suspect FNS picked her because she was the only one the ship they could slip on the Enterprise before the shakedown. So I'm making my suggestion for 2 reasons. What suggestion? That we put her down on Yalbo now. 2 reasons, Jim. She's not up to it, and I'm not sure she'd want the responsibility if I were you. I left it up to her. If I put her planet side now, both FNS and Starfleet would pin my ears back. She's FNS's choice. I must assume they know what they're doing. McCoy looked highly dubious. Did you happen to read the last story FNS did on a Starfleet vessel? No, I'm not much for the dailies, Bones. His one-liners. A correspondent from Mars spent 2 days aboard a heavy-duty freighter. By the time he was through, he'd unveiled rampant corruption, the possible existence of an unknown space plague. Space Plague would be a great name for a band, and general incompetence of the captain, none of which charges, I might add, were regarded seriously by Special Review Board. Kirk sighed. Bones, she doesn't want to leave. I can't make her go. She has a job to do. Oh, she wants to leave. You just didn't give her any easy way out. He asked her, do you want to leave? And she said no.
That was a pretty easy way out.
McCoy's eyes widened. Jim, you'd like her to stay, wouldn't you? Kirk regarded McCoy with a level stare. Doctor, I have a ship to take care of.
But I also want to bang her.
Space dock. We can discuss this later. If you could ... haven't caught on by then. He turned his chair forward. McCoy straightened, shook his head, and backed away a few steps. It was the doctor's policy to be on the bridge for the first hour or so of any voyage, whenever possible. Nurse Chapel was in control of the sickbay so he could indulge his little quirk. Engineering, Kirk said. Scott here, Captain.
That's good.
Thank you. Outfitted and ready to sail, Mr. Scott? Boilers at super heat, sir. I lost it for a second.
I did never get it.
Alright, no worries.
Straighten your gasket, Mr. Scott. Aye, sir. Gasket's already straightened. Kirk smiled. Dead slow, Mr. Sulu. Lieutenant Uhura, send our sincere thanks to the space deck crew. Our compliments to the Orbit Advisory Committee on Yalbo. Mason came on the bridge looking apprehensive. Her recorder followed at a discreet distance. She fixed her eyes on the forward screen and stood beside McCoy. Are we leaving? She asked. Yes, ma'am. How long before we use warp drive? Not long at all. Impulse power, Mrs. Sulu, Kirk said. All ahead full. Aye, Captain. The Enterprise, heir to 3,000 years of human and Vulcan experience on sea, sand, and in space, had extended 3,000 years, had extended the space dock with majestic slowness. Now she gently stretched the gravitational bonds of Yalbo and spiraled outward, lining up with the corkscrew magnetic fields of Yalbo's small yellow sun. Kirk could feel the vibrations of the impulse engines, smooth enough but always coarse when compared with the steady power on the warp drive. Align for solar system exit, sir, Yamesa said. Very well. Warp 1, Mr. Sulu. Kirk felt his chest strain at the sensation of the Enterprise's sudden ignorance of gravitational bonds. He was now at the beck and call of a higher geometry, one which propelled her at just above the speed of light, away from the tiny how do you pronounce this? Is it
Which one are you?
this right here? Is it
Ochre?
Ochre?
Yeah, it's Ochre.
Okay. Planet of Yalbo and away from the yellow star. Kirk briefly called up a virtual display of the outside view. The entire universe seemed compressed to a coruscating band of light, rotated and bent away from the direction of the view cameras. Warp 2 and hold until Mr. Scott okays us for final warp sequencing, he said. Aye, Captain. He switched the virtual display off. The forward screen now showed a computer simulated display of the stellar system and distant stars. When the Enterprise reached Warp 4, some of the closer stars themselves would appear to move on the display. Kirk glanced at Mason, wondering if she was feeling what he felt. Like a tune in his bones, the warp drive sang, a beautiful siren pushing the ship faster in relation to status geometry. The home universe, yet regarding its speed in relation to higher spaces they now traverse, the secret of the warp drive, in fact, was that it did not allow the Enterprise to reach an infinite speed to align geometries, which would turn them all into a single, tiny, very dead black hole. Welcome to Warp Drive, Mr. Mason. Thank you, Captain. It's quite an experience, she wondered. Oh, he's back to calling her Mr. Mason. She wondered if she was going to be ill, and where was the science officer, the Vulcan? Wasn't he supposed to be on the bridge at a time like this? As if in psychic response, the elevator door opened and Spock stepped out, walking to his station at the computer console. Lieutenant what did we decide?
Veblen. I think we
Veblen.
did Veblen.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Veblen followed, smiling at her in passing. At this speed, we'll exit your system in 2 hours, Kirk said. I venture you've never traveled that fast before. I've never been off Yalbo until now. I'm just a country bumpkin, Captain. I mean, she kind of thinks like a country bumpkin as far as like the xenophobia.
Backwardness?
Yeah. She was embarrassed by her own tone. I hope to get sophisticated fast. Don't rush it, Mr. Mason. Stay racist for a little while longer.
Racist.
Kirk said, first experiences are to be savored. I'll savor them in my off-duty hours, Captain. And please, call me Rowena.
This is a long chapter.
This is a long chapter. I'm just going for it. Certainly, Rowena. I see you've requested an interview with me in the ship's computer bay. Will 1600 hours be okay? If Scotty, Mr. Scott, gets his refit done in time, we should be at warp maximum by then. And I can spare about 15 minutes. I'll be there. She swallowed and decided she needed a place to sit down. Since there was no seat on the bridge not already taken, she returned to the elevator. As the doors closed, McCoy followed and tapped his finger on the railing. Captain Scott is engineering. Captain Scott in engineering. We finished the refit, she shouted. Take warp maximum without too many problems. What, no complete certainty? Kirk asked. Nothing will go wrong that we won't be able to take care of. Oh, nothing will go wrong that we won't be able to take care of, Scott said. And if something does go wrong, you'll be the first to know. It's now just going
more
into
Irish.
Midwestern.
No, it's perfect.
It's going a little Irish.
Mine
It
was
is
like
going
a
Irish.
bastardization of British. So.
Sorry if you're Scottish. I tend Irish because that's the one I know better. After us, Captain. Ready, Mr. Scott? As we'll ever be. Good, Mr. Yamasa. Final adjustment to bearings. Yes, sir. We'll exit the galactic arm in 2 hours, 10 seconds of a ship's time. Catenary curve through 4 selected geometries as soon as we hit warp 7. I feel like he had a thesaurus when he was writing
Oh,
this.
he definitely did.
Sequence us through warp 5, Mr. Sulu. Sequencing. The turn in his bones quickened its tempo. 3, Captain, 4, and 5. The sequence through warp 11, Mr. Sulu. Mr. Yamasa, compute our entry point into Romulan neutral zone as soon as you can and put it on my console display. Warp 6, 7, Kirk's eyes narrowed. 8, Sulu continued. 9, 10, maximum warp 11. Captain. Warp 11 was a special treat for James Kirk. The tune in his bones, he really likes that metaphor of a tune in your bones, became a symphony. Secretly, he relished the thought of evading status geometry for 17 days, even if the course did take them through contested territory. If they were lucky, they would spend less than an hour in neutral zones. That is, if they were not interfered with. He knew some of the Romulan and... How do I say this?
Oh, that was he took a good stab at it. We don't know.
Oh, yeah. How...
Kshatriyan.
Kshatriyan commanders who patrolled the regions. Good officers, good commanders, and very anxious to test their abilities and their ships against his. Peace, he thought, like seduction. Okay. Sometime much more exciting than the act itself. Okay. Gregory!
My bud. My dude.
Stop being horny on Maine, Greg!
This It sounds like something I would have written at the age of 13.
Yeah. I'm 13 and this is horny. He made a mental note to set the sonic shower for a very cold cleansing before his next sleep period. Kirkland.
Kirkland. No, generic Costco.
Costco man.
Sir!
What can you tell me about Teprilla, Spock? Spock stolidly, thank you, sorry. On his immaculate stone meditation plank, eyes closed, deep in the mathematical exercises he had taken up lately, conditional to his entry in the third stage of Vulcan life at age 79. Kirk knew he wasn't interrupting his friend. Vulcans had the remarkable ability to devote their attention to the several things at once. I wish I can't focus on one thing at once. She's a most extraordinary Vulcan, Captain. I regret not knowing her better. She has pioneered new ways of logic, ways heretofore regarded as unacceptable by the Spiorna. She made it outside of family prearrangements. A tradition you've had difficulties with, if I recall, Kirk said ruefully. Spock nodded his head to one side. In my case, the contamination, there we go, of human blood could be brought to account. But Teprilla is pure Vulcan, and in many ways her approach harks back to a very famous Vulcan Strovadors, a philosopher named Skarin? Sure. It's Karen with an S on the beginning.
Karen with an S.
Who recommended the prevalence of inductive over deductive reasoning. Jeez, the words, my guy. Inductive reasoning is essential, but not a Vulcan's favorite. It's starting to feel like a warm up, like a singing warm up. The way that my tongue is like.
That's definitely a tongue twister.
Yeah. You're saying she uses feminine intuition? A statement worthy of McCoy, Captain. I don't know.
I don't think she has any intuition. Oh, well, maybe Teprilla does. Other chick doesn't. Mason doesn't.
Yes, my apologies. At the very least, she's regarded as wayward. And quite brilliant. For Drake and Teprilla not to have foreseen and prepared for the dangers of their research is highly unlikely. I must assume that something completely outside Vulcan and human experience has occurred in the Black Box Nebula. We must ready ourselves accordingly. How will we do that? I've been studying Mr. Veblen's texts on the new computer systems. The principle of stochastic algorithm is quite intriguing. To set up a portion of the ship's computer which simply models possibility after possibility, always throwing in some unlikely variable until it produces a situation which matches our own, could be quite helpful. Kirk regarded the Vulcan for several minutes, thinking, in some ways, this is shaping up to be a routine rescue mission, but Spock's statements bothered him. They could certainly do worse than let Veblen lose, within limits. Kirk wasn't sure he trusted Veblen completely. He deviated from the Starfleet norm in much the same way Spock said. Teprilla deviated from the Vulcan norm, but setting aside a stochastic modeling program seemed reasonable enough. I'll get him working on it right away, Kirk said. He stood up. We'll cross the Romulan neutral zone tomorrow at 15:36 hours. 15:36.42, Spock said. Of course. Forgive my interruption.
Crocra,
Crocra, Spock said. A complex Vulcan term roughly equivalent to the Spanish de nada. Crocra is how you say you're welcome in Vulcan language.
Is it though?
Is it though? Okay, you can take a turn. Here you go.
Okay.
Can we?
Apparently,
what's chat app? What's
apparently
chat
I
doing?
look like I'm making a reaction video watching you guys.
Your face. I
looked to
keep
the
looking up
camera
and catching
twice.
your face, and Natasha is just like side eyeing everything.
Yeah. No, I do, because like I don't know what it is about, like just the way the light is hitting me.
Yeah.
And then just like
You have a very majestic look from right
no,
here.
because I have like a green hue to me. I don't know if it's just like
I'm very
way
pink.
I'm very pink too. Yeah.
maybe it's like the coloring on the camera.
Yeah,
set to something.
Yeah, probably. What happened? What else happened in chat? And while
We
I
have any
was...
more
We're talking
bots?
about if you go up can't wait for the Goodreads review.
Oh my
0
God.
stars. I
It
don't think you
was-
can give 0
You have
stars.
to
Yeah.
give at least one.
It was bread day at the band office here, and it was a good Thursday as I got cake.
Nice.
Cake was not a lie. Avery dressed like a lumberjack.
I am dressed like a lumberjack. My brother says I look like Wendy from Gravity Falls.
Yeah, just need the hat.
Plaid is life. Yeah, Plaid is great. How come Jim is the short version of James and already a pretty short name as it is? I mean, I think a lot in the Victorian era, nicknames had to do with, like, rhyming schemes, but I'm not sure how you get to Jim from James. I would think
Jimosa.
lumberjack is a job there for gender-neutral term. Yes, it is. Has Scotty described his grandmother
Grandmother.
had wheels, she'd be a wagon yet? No. In these films, I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or not at the time. Greg the bear passed away. Oh, he passed away last month. Oh, okay.
Sorry, dude,
I
but
wonder if
you were a
Death Red Regret
horrible
was his
writer.
book.
At least in this writer. Maybe
to be
in this
clear-
book. Maybe you
to
got a
be
lot
clear,
better. Maybe.
I'm very sad, and my condolences go out to his loved ones. I'm very I regret to hear very much that he passed away. I still have questions about the book.
I still stand by the 1 out of 5 stars.
Maybe he
but-
got a lot better.
Maybe he did.
It's the 80s.
Maybe
so
he did. It was 1984.
Maybe he was smoking something.
Maybe he was.
Maybe
You know,
he was
we'll
just
give him
doing
the
a lot
benefit
of
the doubt.
coke.
Maybe
Did
wasn't
He was
everybody.
sexually frustrated.
Although I didn't think I'd ever have to read a line about Captain Kirk taking a cold shower, but thanks. But anyway,
Seance for him.
He said hold a seance for answers.
We'll get a Ouija board.
sorry, Greg. We really don't want to disrespect you, buddy. We just have questions. That's it. I just have questions. Sorry. You do you want to switch with me? Are you super uncomfortable over there?
It's just like, yeah, I guess just because of my height, I'm gonna be,
Oh, you're just
Oh.
trying to stay in frame.
yeah, because like the top of my head gets cut off. I'm trying to figure out how to not look green screened.
Do you at least? I mean, I don't care if you look green screen. Do you at least want to grab a pillow or something to sit on instead of just being on the floor?
Yeah, I think I'll just grab one of those.
Okay. You can.
Chapter 6. The computer bay was a small room barely 10 feet on a side, located several decks beneath the bridge in the Enterprise's saucer. The ship's main computer was lodged in the walls, which were little more than an inch thick. Very thick. The room was empty, save for a pedestal in the middle and a metal mesh pathway leading to the pedestal. Mason stood on the pathway, notebook in hand, bemused by the complete silence. Why are you bemused? What? How does silence bemuse you? You're wrong in the head. Here, even the ineffable sensation of being in warp drive was missing. Kirk stood by the pedestal, waiting patiently for her next question. They were 10 minutes into the interview, and thus far, Kirk had given only a precis of his career. I was like, precis? That's not a word. It is. A precis of his career, which she had duly recorded, knowing she would have to go elsewhere to flesh it out. I suppose we should get down to the inevitable. What might that be? Kirk asked wearily. Well, that didn't sound wary, but that's fine. How did the starship captain feel, knowing that in his every decision is going to be second-guessed by the machine? Kirk hated being diplomatic to the point of misleading, but he hated being diplomatic to the point of misleading, but this was clearly a time when evasion was necessary. Starfleet has the interests of the Federation in mind. If a starship captain engages in erratic behavior, the monitors will act as a safeguard. They'll take away the captain's command. It's my duty to not be erratic. Surely Starfleet is very careful in choosing its captains. Isn't it possible for a man or woman who's passed all the tests to be a bad apple? Again, she was leading him into delicate matters. Kirk knew of fellow officers who had gone bad, quote-unquote. They were rare, and the unfortunate results had never extended beyond damage to Starfleet vessels and crew deaths. But there was always the possibility. It's never impossible for a human being to make a mistake. The monitors have been installed to catch us, if a mistake is made. But what if it's a difference of opinion, a judgment call, and you're not allowed to follow your own judgment? Well, that hasn't happened yet. The system hasn't been tried, Captain. True, but I dislike speculation. By the end of this mission, we should have had enough experience to know whether modifications are necessary. Do you expect them to be? Kirk smiled. No, I certainly hope not, he thought. The monitors really consist of the experiences of 6 of our finest starship captains. It's much as if they were staring over my shoulder offering friendly advice. I don't really expect to ever disagree with 6 of Starfleet's finest. Yes, but I'm sure no captain enjoys having his commands questioned by even the most brilliant of his peers. Isn't a captain supposed to be autonomous, the ruler of all surveys? A starship captain is part of a chain of command. He is never his own man. And how often had he strained that dictum past the breaking point? Sometimes the romance of command is overblown, wouldn't you say? I'm always accountable for my actions. In fact, I'm accountable for the actions of the Enterprise and all aboard her. If the monitors can help me in my work, I welcome them. Perhaps you should speak with Lieutenant Veblen. He can describe the technical details. Those aren't classified. That would be very useful. Is he available now? Yes, ma'am. I know that he's available. He's just sitting in the next room, just waiting. Woman. If he isn't, Kirk thought, I'll make him available. He motioned her out of the computer bay and called the computer control center, where Veblen was likely to be engaged in his endless checking and rechecking of the monitor's peripherals. I'll need Mr. Veblen on the bridge with me in 45 minutes, he told Mason. Please don't keep him any longer than that. I won't, Mason said. She watched Kirk enter the elevator. She had learned nothing important, nothing she could substantiate at any rate, and he had only given her 13 minutes. But one thing was perfectly obvious to her, perhaps more so than it was to Kirk himself. The captain of the Enterprise loathed the thought of being second-guessed. Everything was running smoothly on the bridge. Kirk took his chair and paused before beginning an entry into the ship's log. Was it possible, barely possible, that the Enterprise could run herself better without him? He put the doubt aside almost before he had the chance to notice it and made a routine status entry on the compact chair arm keypad. Veblen came on the bridge a moment later. Good day, Mr. Veblen. I trust you had a pleasant interview with Mr. Mason? Yes, indeed, Veblen said, smiling. I hope she banged him. He's a very pleasant person. May I listen in on the monitor's communications with the command console, Captain? Someone needs to have sex so we can get all of this out of the way. Off screen, preferably.
Off screen, please. Oh my god, please. I can't do it.
I mean, like, what's the likelihood of it being off page and not written in excruciating detail?
Well, I guess it depends. The foreplay might be, but Kirk looked at him, vaguely irritated. Yes, of course. Veblen made the necessary patches through the science console and plugged in an earphone. His face assumed an air of blissful attentiveness as he listened to the computer voices discoursing with each other in various machine languages. Mr. Veblen, Kirk said a few minutes later. Yes, Captain. Veblen had plugged a diagnostic tricorder into a science console. The display on the console screen was spectacularly complex. Mr. Spock recommends that the Enterprise be prepared for any exigency. I don't know how to say that word.
Exigency.
Exigency. That makes sense. Okay. Be prepared for any exigency, and I concur. We'll need, sir, I've already initiated a stochastic algorithm in the strategy and forecasting centers. Of course, Kirk said. He bit his lip. Precisely. Any results yet? It's only been running for an hour, sir, Veblen smiled almost gleefully. Last I checked, it was running a model on the development of Hoyle clouds under protostar conditions. Hoyle clouds, Mr. Veblen. Large sentient masses of an interstellar gas, Captain, named after the 20th century astronomer. Yes, the Enterprise has encountered similar creatures several times. Why should that be amusing, Mr. Veblen? By itself, no reason at all, sir. But the algorithms speculating on the possibility they were chess masters. Wait, I missed some words. But the algorithm was speculating on the possibility they were chess masters. His smile widened, as if he was filled with some hidden joke he couldn't possibly explain. I assume that is in the nature of the algorithm, Mr. Veblen, and we shouldn't be alarmed? Quite unnecessary, Captain. The program does not expect to be interrupted while preparing its required list of nonsense situations. It will select useful scenarios on its own. Thank you, Kirk said. Somehow his sense of humor faded when he was in the presence of the young computer officer. Perhaps it was Veblen's seeming inability to wear a uniform properly. Please disengage the command console now, Mr. Veblen. Yes, sir. Veblen withdrew his tricorder and patches and returned the privacy of his chair to Kirk. McCoy came to the bridge, looking mildly jubilant. Everyone's happy. He stood to one side of Kirk, smiled, and shook his head. Captain, I think we've got the hang of working with the watchdogs. I'm learning to reason with them. God help me. We shouldn't expect too much trouble, he lowered his voice, unless we run into anything just the tiniest bit unusual. He cast a meaningful glance at Veblen. Glad to hear it, Doctor. When you've mastered them, perhaps you'll inform me on how to deal with Mr. Veblen's command override. That's simple, Jim, McCoy said. Just don't screw up. Use your own judgment, but for God's sake, don't make any decisions. Kirk laughed. Status report on your weapons test, Mr. Chekhov. Chekhov swiveled his chair. I'm going to try and do a Chekhov voice. We are ready for almost anything, Captain. I don't know what that was.
What is he supposed to be?
He's Russian.
He's Russian. Very, very Russian.
Very Russian.
Okay, just-
Incredibly Russian.
Very stereotypically Russian.
Captain's log, stardate 4380.4. I'm going back through my tapes and trying to find all the information on hand about, how do we say, Kshatriyan, Vice
I believe you.
Commodore Ugelbar Darzochkin.
Google bar.
V.C. Darzochkin is the last confirmed commander of the stretch of the neutral zone. As anticipated, the Romulans gave us no trouble during our brief passage. The however, are not likely to be so cooperative, even with the acquiescence of the Federation representatives. I last had dealings with Darzochkin when I was a very green exec aboard the Bonhomme Richard, escorting treaty software to presiding regent Dom Hauk. My impression was that VC Darzochkin is a devious son of a bitch and nobody to trust when you're in a hurry. Enter! Kirk was on the bridge in less than a minute. Veblen smoothly disengaged the command override, which thankfully had done nothing in the meantime, and Uhura played back the message. Kirk listened intently. Yes, indeed, the voice, even in translation, was that of Darzochkin. Unforgettable. Defender. Okay. Darzochkin. I'm gonna do something. It's not gonna be good. Defender of the God's endowment, Prime Commodore Ugerbar Darzochkin to the inept commander of the easily recognizable Federation starship Enterprise.
Which character is this?
I think this is Zhochkin.
Okay, got
I hope it is. It may not be by the time I get to the end of this paragraph. Your course will take you across the neutral territory that is regarded as an act of war. Are you prepared to violate all of that our treaties stand for? Greetings, Kirk said, to the righteous defender Darzochkin. Congratulations on your promotion and all proper respect to the presiding regent. Kirk deliberately left out the regent's name in case there had been a reshuffling in the royal house. The Prime Commodore's servant officers must be lax in their duty not to inform his vigilance that we have already sought and received permission to cross. We are on a rescue mission. Uhura listened closely, then swung her chair around to face Kirk. There is no reply, Captain. Sir, Veblen said, the monitors suggest that will probably broadcast a conciliatory reply on an obscure channel to Lieutenant Uhura, and I are quite aware of that, mister. Kirk said, perhaps too sharply. Lieutenant, repeat my signal and add the substance of the message from the granting Starfleet permission. Spock came on the bridge, took his position at the science center, and surreptitiously checked on Veblen's points of access to the computers. Kirk noticed this and smiled his appreciation. He didn't like being in a conspiracy against one of his own officers, but in possible emergency it was best to know everything in advance, including whether the new systems would allow him a full range of actions. Mason came on the bridge a moment later. Her expression was more harried than scared, but this changed to stiff-faced control as she caught on to the situation. Still no reply, Captain, Uhura said, glancing back at her new roommate. Distance to the neutral zone, Mr. Yamasa. 3 light hours and closing rapidly, Captain. Maintain warp maximum. Ensign Chekhov. Load torpedo bays with decoy targets and prepare to launch. Shields on maximum. Reply coming in now, Captain. Let's hear it. Captain Cook, is it not? The had altered his tone to take advantage of human inflections. I just have given up at this point. There's a lot of consonants. Our records are not so precise, but I remember a young officer with a voice very much like your own. I assume you have achieved your own command, and my congratulations.
I don't know when it became aerostatic, but that's okay.
That's fine.
I measured you as a worthy adversary then, despite your experience. Our machines are even now searching for such a message. Until then, please reduce to impulse power and skirt the neutral zone. Kirk grimaced. Reply, Lieutenant. Unable to reduce to sublight speed. Repeat, we are on a rescue mission and time is of the essence. We have already broadcast your own government's response, complete with uniquely coded identifiers. Please allow us to pass. Your hostility could be considered the first step toward a very undesirable situation. Uhura listened for a few minutes. The bridge was silent except for Mason's somewhat uneven breathing. Kirk looked at Veblen and saw flushed excitement on his face, but no fear. Mason was beginning to show her distress in various twitches and nervous motions. No reply, Captain. Maintain warp maximum, Mr. Sulu. Mr. Chekhov, clear the bays of two decoys and load 2 photon torpedoes. Do we have the ships, Mr. Yamasa? They are still out of range and hiding, sir. Sir, Veblen said. No interruptions, please, Mr. Veblen. But this could be important, sir. For God's sake, Mason wanted to scream. Listen to him.
It's okay.
Please, Kirk shot an angry glance at the computer officer who nodded and backed away a step. Distance, Mr. Yamasa. 2 light hours from neutral zone. Buoy 81, the closest, sir. Yellow alert, gentlemen. The sirens begin on all decks. General quarters. There was a piercing whistle and a mechanical echo of his command. On his console, a display ticked off the stations reporting fully manned and ready. The bridge screen showed a reconstructed image of the stars immediately ahead and postulated positions of the battle fleet. We have them, Captain. No, sorry. This is Chekhov. We have them, Captain, Chekhov said. Yamasa concurred. They are in the classic Warp E formation. They look very combative. Kirk nodded. The green postulated positions of the fleet on the forward screen were replaced by red confirmeds. In Warp E, the outlying lines of ships would be in warp drive, traveling between Warp Minimum and Warp 3, while a rear line and center piercing line were on the impulse power. If the Enterprise were caught in that formation, no matter what tactic she used, she would be confronting fully prepared ships. Kirk saw that McCoy had come on the bridge. He stood near Mason, hands gripping a railing, wearing his tailored expression of overbearing interest. Mr. Sulu, Kirk said. He paused. Sulu turned, waiting. Maintain course, steady as she goes. Sir, we will pass within range of the formation, Yamasa said. I assumed as much, Mr. Yamasa. Any signals, Uhura? None, Captain. Steady, then. Steady. He sounded as if he were reassuring a horse, Mason thought. Kirk patted the chair arms and stared intently at the forward screen. Veblen stood to one side, trying to look chastened and not entirely succeeding. It was at a time like this that Kirk felt he was almost in telepathic communication with Spock. The science officer's mere presence was enough to make Kirk believe that, somehow, he was doing what Spock would suggest. 57 light minutes. Status report. All stations manned and ready, Captain. Conditional red alert. Again, the sirens and the ticking off of acknowledgments on his command console. There's a lot of words. Always, the rush of adrenaline, which the cavemen had used to prepare for the wolf or cave bear, which Kirk was now using to prepare himself for a fleet of high-technology battle cruisers deep between the stars, between dimensions. That was a weird non-sentence. Veblen swallowed audibly. His first time, Kirk thought. Good for him. Mason hadn't moved. She kept glancing between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. No reply, Captain, Uhura repeated. Spock, are we tapping their ship to ship? Yes, Captain. They do not appear to be in a state of great alarm. Other than that, I cannot read the signals clearly. They may be false. If that son of a bitch was making him put his crew through a conditional red just to get his jollies. 2 light minutes, Yamasa said, within range. Warp E, shearing and closing. Oh, sorry, this was Chekhov. Warp E, shearing and closing, Chekhov said. Full red alert, Kirk ordered. Impulse ships going to warp minimum, Chekhov said. Formation closing on us, sir, Sulu reported. Prepare for combat, damage alert imminent. Captain, Uhura held her hand over her ear. A message from the Prime Commodore. He wishes us the best of Creator's luck and acknowledges receipt of our permission to pass through the neutral zone. Kirk, McCoy, and Mason let out their breath at almost the same time. Kirk looked at the computer officer with a wry grin. Well, Mr. Veblen? Captain? What did the monitor suggest? That we shouldn't worry, sir. The Shushushum are unable to engage in a full-scale war at this time and have no need to do so and are renowned for enjoying testing their adversaries. The monitors concurred down the line with your actions, sir. Very good to hear that, Mr. Veblen. Why was the message so urgent, then? Why, sir, I felt there was no need for tension if all was to go well. Wasted energy. Quite, Mr. Veblen, Kirk said, glancing at Mason. Quite.
All right, switch with me before you start reading.
No, it's okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I can-
Cameron said this looks like a meme. This is set up for a meme.
All right.
When your parents at a party and you're trying to pay attention and be good.
Shush.
I can sit on the stool and be like, because I'm smaller, so I can...
No, but you're going to be even smaller in the frame.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
You'll
though.
shrink
but
out
I,
the frame.
but I can be on like the regular stool and be like a normal size, you know?
Shush.
Okay, yeah, sure, let's try it.
Shush.
Was it shush?
No, that's the one with the K, and I just gave up because there was too many consonants. So
Is that like a specific accent that you...
no, I just didn't know how to say the word. So
No, but the other... You didn't accent for someone who... That wasn't Chekhov. Right?
The only other one I accented for was the Commodore dude, and
Vaguely Aristotic.
that was vaguely Aristotic. Was supposed to be Russian, and I didn't really accomplish either
Sorry,
one.
who was that?
We've already passed him, so he shouldn't be coming back.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Winnie. Oh, nope.
Oh, no, the shelf.
I bet.
Oh, it's...
Oh, no.
There we go. There we
I
go.
think this...
She can just lay
push
down.
it in.
It'll be good. It'll be fun.
Okay.
It'll be great.
Let's catch up with the chat.
How's chat? How we doing?
Nothing could possibly go wrong. That's the first thing that's gone wrong.
Yeah.
Did this novel come with a free dictionary? A dictionary written also by Greg the Bear.
Greg the Bear. That's what we're just calling him now.
Greg the Bear.
Wonder if he was gay.
What?
Because Bear.
Bears, yeah.
Because of the...
I'm sorry.
A+ Russian
I'm really
accent.
not trying to disrespect somebody who died. It's just... We have questions.
A+ Russian accent would put the Tsar to shame.
Thanks. It wouldn't, but thanks.
The character is called Shajustin.
Shajustin
Shabiber.
Shabiber.
Love it.
When I read something to my husband and can't figure out a word, when I give up and declare that name or that word, lol. If the stars ever align for another reading stream with all three here and for the book Jurassic Park, it'll be cool to see you dressed up as the characters Avery, Alan Grant, Natasha as Elle Sattler, and Anton as Ian Malcolm. Yes, please. I would. He's my friends and I quote life finds a way all the time, and you gotta go.
Yeah.
All the time. Got the gif of Grant and Malcolm in my head. Is that the one? Are you referring to the one where it's like Dr. Ian Malcolm is like partly shirtless on his side, and then they comped him in on top of the sleeping dinosaur, and then and then Grant's just like on Malcolm's chest.
I assume that's the one that they're talking about.
When you finally get to eat at the adult table for Thanksgiving and not the kids area.
Someone take a screenshot and send it to me.
Well, we have the VOD.
We do have the bond, yeah. I can go back and get
Hi, hope everyone's well. Thanks. Hi.
Hi, Paulo.
Yeah, now we got a mod in here and then can take care of all the...
Oh, yeah, I've already had to kick out like 2 bots, but...
Yeah, the bots are strong tonight.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can't resist Greg the Bear.
let's get at this. When Mason entered Uhara's quarters, the communications officer had just come off duty and was changing into a flowing orange and red robe decorated with a fringe of leopards stalking through the jungle grass. Uhara smiled at her and offered a glass of wine from the cabin auto chef. That was really something, Mason said, sitting on the edge of her bunk. I'm not sure I've ever been more scared. It was a bluff, Uhara said. I think most of us were aware of that. I'm sorry there wasn't more time to prepare you. The captain didn't behave like it was a bluff. Uhara laughed. Poker face. And everyone seemed relieved when it was over. While you can never tell what a Kshatriyan
That's the one I've been saying. Shh, 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 shh. By the way, guys.
Kshatriyan might do. Do you know much about them? Mason shook her head. Only what I've read in my school books and picked up from the subspace bulletin, the dailies. They're quite an admirable race, actually. Very tough, very defensive, ... And, well, they should be. They remind me of the Zulu. They're an old race, surrounded by the Romulans and the Federation, threatened by the Klingons, and still they hold their own, even against better technologies. They're the same basic stock as Commander Spock, aren't they? They're part of the third octant Docrian migrations, if that's what you mean. The Vulcans, Romulans, Klingons, Kshatrians are all related if you go back far enough. And Spock doesn't feel funny siding with the humans against his own blood. I'm afraid the ties go too far back for any of them to feel much kinship. Besides, who knows what Spock feels? I don't understand. Uhura gathered up her gown and pulled a chair near to Mason's bed. He's a Vulcan. They have very rigid codes governing emotions. Yes, I know that. She felt slightly irritated. We're not that isolated at Yalbo. But he doesn't hold opinions, not unless there's a lot of evidence behind them. Personal opinions are anathema to a Vulcan. In fact, anything having to do with petty personal traits is subdued during Vulcan education. But enough talk about Spock. I'd like to learn more about you. Mason shrugged. I'm a reporter. I come from a very small, isolated planet. What else is there to say? Besides, I'm not important, only the story. I'm sorry, none of us could get down to Yalbo, Uhura said. I'd like to visit all sorts of planets, even small ones. It started out as a mining colony, Mason said, one hand stroking the back of the other. She looked down at her hands and clasped them. Full of metals, rare earths. We can't drink the groundwater. It would poison us. The atmosphere is filled with nitric acid vapor. When we go outside the compounds, we have to wear full bodysuits. It's not what you call a paradise. Still, I bet you like it. Uhura leaned forward.
Sorry,
I'm very distracted.
No, you and I are piling in on the same things. Continue. Sorry.
Uhura leaned forward, her eyes, dark eyes glittering. Mason grinned and shook her head. We all like something about where we grew up. About where we grow up. The people, maybe. Sure, there are good people on Yalbo. You're proud of Yalbo. Admit it. Mason considered. Of course, we've done some really remarkable things. Like we've stayed alive until the Federation chose us for an outpost. That wasn't easy. Yalbo became productive just when there was a metals glut in the second octant. We'd have had to ship our output 1,000 parsecs to even begin to be competitive. Those were hard times. How old were you? I hadn't even been born then. But my parents told me all about them. Some people would have starved if it hadn't been for the Starfleet rescue ships. My father served on a rescue ship, Uhura said. Maybe he came to Yalbo. Accepting charity was hard. My people were hippies, you know.
Hippies. They use the word hippies, huh?
Yeah. We're going there. All right.
Capital H, hippies. They wanted to be self-sufficient, to get away from the galactic government and set up their own commune. Most came from the Martian mining towns originally. They needed the rescue ships, but they weren't glad to see them. We never have approved of military venturing. I thought hippies were from the 20th century. Communes on Mars started them up again. People on Yalbo changed a lot of things. We're humanists. We believe that everything in the galaxy centers on human beings and that all other species are subordinate. Okay, so...
Oh, so they're just racist.
So, yeah.
They're just racist. They're just straight up racist. Okay.
They're straight up racist.
But maybe she's gonna have a character arc.
I hope so.
Let's hold out hope.
She has
For
another
a hero.
3/4 of the book to go.
White supremacist, as Cameron puts it. Yeah, space white supremacists, I think.
Just human supremacists.
Human supremacists, yeah.
There's only one race, the human race. What about NASCAR?
What about NASCAR?
That's my favorite vine. Uhura made a face. Doesn't sound like a very useful philosophy. It works well enough on a planet where there aren't any other species. And you have to admit, somebody like Spock takes a little getting used to. O'Hara stood and folded her arms. Rowena, I don't suggest you try to apply Yalbo philosophies on a starship. We've been too many places, seen too many things. If you really want to know what we're all about, you might spend some time going through the ship's open log. She paused, then bent over the reporter. I've met non-humans who make us look like worms. We crawl into their sight and crawl out again. The only reason they don't step on us is they aren't at all like us. Humans aren't the center of anything. I'm sorry, Mason said. I don't have anything against other species, but I do believe humans are important. Important, yes. More important, no. Now let me get off my soapbox and fix us some dinner. What would you like? They ate quietly, a little wary of each other. When the sleep period was over, Uhura rose and sprayed on her uniform in the cabin's sonic shower. She stood by the door as Mason dressed. I have the bridge watch until 1800 hours. Come by just before, then I'll show you what I can do. Then we can catch dinner in the mess and watch some entertainments in the wardroom. Uhura, Mason said as the lieutenant was about to leave. Yes? Do you have trouble sleeping during warp? Heavens, no. Why? Just wondering. Perhaps it was being away from Yalbo Perhaps it was being away from Yalbo, away from the smells and the company of the compounds. She felt so alone, so very much among strangers. If she felt it, her isolation could easily depress her and begin to affect her work, and she would never stand for that. And she was angry. Uhura was human. Whatever her experiences, surely she felt more allegiance for humans than any other species. How would any species survive if it didn't feel more allegiance for its own kind? Did everyone on the Enterprise think humanists were backwater reactionaries?
Yes.
Yes.
She checked it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, she's saying, how can you survive if you're not racist?
She checked over her equipment. Perhaps it wasn't a bad idea to do some research in the ship's open log. She had 15 more days before the Enterprise reached the black box, time in which to steep herself in the lore of Starfleet, in the history of the Enterprise, time in which to find a chink in all that self-righteous military armor.
I think you have plenty of chinks, sweet girl. You don't need to be finding other people's chinks.
Yeah, she's got enough problems to deal with. So Paulo said, sorry to hear about the bots. And then he said, it's been a rough day again, so just needed a friendly distraction. I'm sorry, Paulo. I'm glad we can be a distraction for you.
You should have heard my Russian accent.
Oh, yeah. I don't wait till you hear the accent.
Rivals the Tsar.
Clumpson says, matching tattoos after stream. Co on one arm, row on another arm. Nah, on the last, all arms pressed together for Corona. Cameron says that this place they're going to sounds like visiting Detroit. Then he said, choose a white supremacist. Then Clumpson said, the character arc goes the other way. They become more racist.
Girl, how it happens.
This is Cameron again. Cameron says, speaking of which, have y'all heard of Kanye?
Oh my god.
And then Cameron also says, this is basically the old mindset of the idea that, quote, human body plan being perfect and what is the end goal of evolution, which is not at all true. Just in our Earth alone, we have a variety of other highly intelligent species that lack the human body plan, such as cephalopods, orcas, avians, which is where films such as Avatar get some flack. And then Derprex said, this is early even for Avery. Yeah, we're streaming early because I have Anton and Natasha with me, so we wanted to stream at a time that was convenient for everybody. So here we are. Texas says, humanism, a philosophical stance that emphasizes the individual and social potential and agency of human beings. It considers human beings the starting point of serious moral philosophical inquiry. And then Cameron says, an early example of this alternate idea was World of Worlds for the Martians, using cephalopod-like bodies. Apollo says he'll rewatch later just for the Natasha in Russian. You'll probably, if you're still watching for a second, hear some more Russian Natasha.
It may get better, it may get worse. That's just, who knows.
And Clump says if you see the inside of an orca's flipper, you'll see 5 phalanges. Whales do be us, only soggy. What is a human
Whales
but
do be
soggy?
us, but soggy.
What are humans except soggy whales persevering?
I think, who was it? John Green said, like, people think so much, seem to compare humans so much to computers, but we have a lot more in common with kangaroos than we do have with computers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just mammals.
Yeah.
Very sad mammals.
Cameron says the War of the Worlds was written in the late 1800s. That shit was ahead of its time. It was, yeah.
So who are you referencing when you're doing a Russian accent?
Well, I'm mostly focusing on reading the words and not stumbling over them, so I start referencing like what actually Chekhov actually sounds like, and then it just devolves very quickly because I'm trying not to stumble over words.
No, that makes sense.
That's what happened.
No, I understand that. Like, sometimes these, especially these words that are, or names that are written.
Well, they're made up words.
Yeah, they're
which technically
words.
all words are technically
Yes.
Well,
made up.
these are made up words that I've not encountered in my life before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you pass my bottle?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then Cameron says it all goes back to the mermaid with man's legs, but in the reverse. Derp says, "Hi, I'm definitely human and not a bot." Hello, Derp. Thank you for being here to possibly help us kick out more bots. And Clump says, of course, it was ahead of its time. H.G. Wells had a time machine.
Yeah.
And Texas says, my mom hates when I point out that we are primates. We're just highly fancy gorillas. Fancy gorillas. I like that.
We're fancy gorillas.
I really like that. Okay.
Soggy whales.
Soggy
is
whales.
another. That's a
gorillas.
good
Yeah.
band name.
Soggy whales.
The soggy whales and the fancy gorillas. Yeah. All right.
Hello, Portland.
We're the soggy whales.
We play post-punk neo soul.
Yes, punk neo soul. All right, chapter 8. Warning: you are encroaching upon security sector. Unauthorized entry may result in prosecution. Spock sat before the monitor's console in the monitor's console, and there's no like apostrophe
Because why not?
Okay. In the computer control center and regarded the message on the screen with mild distaste. As far as he and Veblen had been able to tell, there was nothing against Starfleet regulations, or even against the monitors, and now there's an apostrophe in the wrong place because it's after the okay. Codes in what he was about to do. Still, the human designers had studied every aspect of the monitor's programming, with warning and ambiguous threats. He knew a way around the warning. A path was charted in the system instructions themselves, so he erased the screen and proceeded into the heart of the system. The memory banks, which contained the experience memories of 6 Starfleet commanders. Of the 6, 4 were now dead. Oh, that's depressing. And 2 had retired from active duty. One of the dead was a Vulcan, the only Vulcan to ever reach command rank in Starfleet, Admiral Haruk. Spock was very interested in Haruk's thoughts on certain matters, and from what he could tell, the monitors were perfectly we're back to no apostrophes again. We're perfectly capable of replicating, or no, we don't need apostrophe there, never mind. Perfectly capable of replicating Haruk's to a certain degree, so long as Spock did not attempt to change the memory or tamper with the system in any way, which would affect its function. The worst he was doing was affronting the monitor's sense of dignity, which was how he characterized the intent behind the messages. Machines as complex as the monitors were often best dealt with in terms of quirks and personalities, especially when they had been designed by human beings. Warning: monitors not designed to operate with input of one experience memory alone may result in, I don't know what it actually sounds like, but I'm just kind of, that's my best like AI
I love
voice.
it. It's great.
Thank you. Spock cleared the screen again and placed the direct comm earphones over his head. He heard a distant hissing noise.
Yes.
Not interference, but the carrier signal from the memory frequencies of Admiral Haruk. At this point, there was no need for marching language interface. Spock pressed a button, actuating voice communication, and said, "Live long and prosper, Admiral Haruk. I am Spock, son of Sarek, of Vulcan, and Amanda Grayson, of Earth. I am science and first officer aboard the USS Enterprise." "Live long and prosper, Spock," came the reply. Haruk's voice was steady and even, though a little tinny. "Have the monitors been activated?" "No, sir, they have not. I'm asking questions of my own initiative." "To what end, Spock?" The Admiral is well aware of the first concern of the Vulcan that the first concern of a Vulcan is his duty. My commanding officer is a human, Captain James T. Kirk. The humans have created and installed the monitors aboard Starfleet vessels, but I am not convinced they have used the greatest wisdom in doing so. Still, it is your duty to follow Starfleet regulations as I do. And I will, but I also have a duty to my captain, a duty to discover whether or not the monitors will hinder his performance and ... I'm interested in a Vulcan's response to the monitors. I cannot communicate to you as a Vulcan to Vulcan, Spock. I am not alive in this system. Who really is? I am merely an advisory program. It is advice that I have come for. Humans have been known for erratic behavior. At their best, they are less disciplined than even an inadequate Vulcan. They have created the monitors to circumvent possible difficulties with their own kind. I see nothing wrong with the idea in principle. But in execution, I am not aware of the actual functioning of the system. Vulcans were involved in its creation, and the very best human designers worked hard on it for years. Still, it must be obvious that I approve of the idea in principle, since I agreed to be part of the system. And if a situation should arise which is outside the experience of the monitors, outside the experience of the advisory programs, that possibility has surely been taken into account. It is obvious that a starship commander will encounter an unfamiliar situation. Spock thought for a moment. I am worried the system has never proven itself in actual use, and I do not believe we are going into an ideal situation for such a test. Then there is only one thing for you to do. Yes? Your duty is foremost. I am well aware of that, Admiral. Your duty is foremost. No matter how Spock phrased and rephrased his question, that was the only answer Haruk's experience memories could give. This was far from reassuring. Which duty was Haruk referring to? Duty to captain ship, Starfleet? Duty to obey the monitors? No Vulcan supported a creed that bound him to self-destruction without a purpose, or the destruction of others for the sake of duty alone. Obviously, Haruk's experience memory was trying to impress upon him the necessity of a hierarchy in duties. Among Vulcans, such a hierarchy was seldom necessary, but among humans, in this situation... Warning! The correct use of the monitors depends upon the interaction of the 6 experience monitors contained within the system. Spock returned the monitors to their normal mode and removed the direct comm headphones. The door to the computer control center beeped and Veblen entered with a notepad in hand, busily making calculations. "Mr. Spock, you might be able to answer a question. And you, Mr. Veblen, might be able to answer one as well." Veblen stopped and stared at Spock, obviously nonplussed. "Anything you wish, Mr. Spock. Your question first." "Oh, it'll wait," Veblen said. Veblen was intrigued by the possibility that the science officer would have questions to ask of him. "I have not yet had an opportunity to study the monitors. Fail-safe operations. If they should malfunction in the estimation of the officers and crew of a vessel, can they be disengaged? Such a failure is highly unlikely, sir." That does not answer my question. So can they disengage? I ... don't know myself, sir. "Then it is time we studied the fail-safes in more detail, wouldn't you say?" Veblen regarded Spock shrewdly. "Sir, if I may ask another question entirely, what is it you expect us to find in the black box?" "I am like the Federation Interstellar Scouts, Mr. Veblen. I believe it is necessary to be prepared." Luck favors the prepared, as Edna Mode says. Mason had spent her life in the compounds of Yalbo and did she really? We haven't talked about this enough. She did not find the corridors and spaces of the Enterprise completely unfamiliar. Still, there was something about the size of an enclosed, self-contained ship, like the Enterprise, which, excuse me, like the Enterprise, which was awesome. There were a few areas in the ship off limits to her, and even fewer reaches where she was not allowed to go for reasons of safety, at least with an escort. So exploring became one of her favorite pastimes. Even as a child, she had been fascinated by the recesses of the compounds, places where unused equipment was stored or where the automated processing plants hummed and chugged lonely efficiency. When Ensign Chekhov procured, is that his name? Is that how you say his first
Chekhov.
name? Ensign?
Ensign? Yeah.
Ensign.
Or ensign.
Ensign Chekhov procured a plastic map of the ship for her. She looked forward to days of walking, crawling, and climbing, with the story foremost in her mind. However, she visited the sickbay first. Nurse Christine Chappell, an efficient, somewhat spinsterish woman.
Cool.
She doesn't have a husband, so we're judging her for that, I
Yep.
guess. Still firmly holding on to her classic beauty, showed her. We
Heavy
both just
sigh.
had, we both just had the breath taken out of our lungs. Okay, carrying on. Showed her the diagnostic beds, both older and newer models, and explained the organ farm, official name. The Genotype Conservatory Center was a large bank of shiny gray cabinets at the rear of a sick bay. It's the forerunner to the Tarek unit, Chappell explained. We have genetic records on hand for every member of the crew. In case of injury, we can grow a new replacement for any body part, except, of course, those which are deeply personalized, like the brain. We can grow a brain, but it will be quite blank. The major advancement in the Tarek is that we can replicate the present individual, and while you're here, you might as well make your contribution. With her fear of needles, it took some self-control not to protest when Chappell brought out a biopsy tomer. The nurse deftly, Natasha is so concerned. The nurse deftly and painlessly removed a section of cells from the inside of her cheek and closed the tiny gap with an electronic suture. We'll put this in the organ farm, and heaven forbid, if anything unfortunate happens, you'll have some insurance on file.
Okay, we're almost done the chapter.
Hang on, let me finish the chapter first.
Almost
and then
done
we
the
can talk
chapter.
about it. Chappell thought it would be best if McCoy gave her a tour of the Tarek itself, and McCoy was busy, quote, playing poker with the monitors, unquote, as Chappell described it. He likes Card Shark with new victims. He should be human again in a few days. Is it possible that the Enterprise personnel are taking delight in finding ways to circumvent the monitors? Mason wrote in her notepad. On some of her sojourns, she brought along the FNS recorder and made short documentaries of various ship activities. She expended an entire 15 minutes of recorder file time on games played by the crew in the gym. Highly competitive, she noted. The Enterprise crew members take delight in testing each other and exhibiting their own prowess. While there is little braggadocio, per se, there is a firm commitment to doing one's best in all circumstances. In team activity, the degree of cooperation is impressive. Teams can be reshuffled at will, and yet the players mesh instantly and seamlessly, as if they have been mates all their lives, as indeed they have where shipboard lives are concerned. Chief Engineer Scott was only too glad to show off the engineering decks during an hour of off-duty. He took her on a single-minded spelunking expedition, his terms, through the access tubes and maintenance corridors of the ship's impulse power plant. She held her hand at his insistence on she held her hand at his insistence on the outer matter and antimatter On the shield of one of the huge oblate, quote, bottles where matter and antimatter were precisely mixed, and felt the indescribable tingle of control. Okay, so she's just like got her hand on it. The indescribable tingle of controlled total destruction. Wow, that's metal. She recorded, though she knew it would never pass FNS muster, his technical description of power plant theory, but was more interested in his summing up. We could travel from one end of the galaxy to the other if we could only only fine-tune our understanding of what we already have. He shook his head and smiled. She's a lovely engine, but I've seen engines of alien ship which make her look like a bicycle chain, and I'm the monkey pedaling. What I wouldn't have had him. Oh gosh, there's a lot of apostrophes here. What I wouldn't have had given just to peek at the manuals or one of those. That's the way it was written. I don't know.
I like how they didn't write in his accent until
right
just now.
Until right this minute. When McCoy finally got around to showing her the Tarek, she was somewhat disappointed. The doctor explained the basic operation of the unit and touched briefly on how it was integrated with the monitors, but smiled when Mason asked if he believed the monitors would cause him difficulties. I'm working on it, he said, and would say no more. While Spock and McCoy tried to understand the function of the monitors, and while Mason toured and took notes, the Starship Enterprise rode a shock wave of warped space-time above and through ribbons of stars and interstellar gas clouds, across galactic arms and obscured abysses at speeds too great to be entirely real. Through the mysteries of advanced physics, she shed her natural tardiness in scattered, dissipating ghosts and sleeked across realms incomprehensible to the minds of most of those inside her hull. Oh my god. Within 2 weeks, sensors could easily reconstruct the looming shape of the black box nebula, no longer entirely dark. Mason, looking at the nebula on the screen of Uhura's cabin, thought she detected a sinister resemblance in the nebula's new aspect. Where the light of protostars shined through, it outlined 3 distinct clawed talons. As Enterprise approached hour by hour, the talons seemed to spread wider. Then the reaches of the nebula closed around them, and the Enterprise and her new crew were drawn back to Genesis itself. That was a very complex. The next chapter is like 2.5 pages, so I crossed the bridge for us. How's chat doing?
Rex says, well, it did work for Godzilla, the Soggy Whales, and Fancy Gorillas, which is in fact would be a good band name.
Yeah.
I assume these monitors aren't lizards. No, not lizards.
No.
Just really bad idea.
Yep.
Wow. I thought this was written in the 80s, not the 50s.
You would think. Star Trek cult. And then Clump says, I hope the gym is called Jim's Gym. I hope it is too.
Jim's Gym.
OMG, sounds like what my group would do in D&D to resurrecting party members. Literally keeping a jar of nail and hair clippings in the bank.
She put a needle into her cheek. Why did she have to do that?
To get the DNA.
Well,
She could have swabbed the
there's
cheek.
easier ways to do that.
That tingle is radiation poisoning from the warp core. It is a quicker way to get a haircut. Wow.
Texas says a little radiation never hurt anyone.
I mean, there was radiation. There was radon everything in the 50s.
That's true.
Radon glowing contact lenses to help you see in the dark.
Oh hey, I'm Jim. Cameron Jim says hello. Son, add to that. Jim's Gym plays Jim's Jams. Cameron says now you say damn it Jim and be accurate. That's really funny. Okay.
All right. I hope that Scott or Chekhov is in this next chapter.
Me too.
I hope so too. Let me get a little
Peruse.
look. I don't think they are. It's way too short.
How long is the next chapter? You want to read that one too?
Sure, it's longer.
Yeah, you can read the longer one if you want.
Okay.
Chapter 9. Station 1 was now embedded in a twisted strand of gas and dust at the nebula's perimeter. The Enterprise advanced through the clouds at less than 1/4 light speed. Any faster, and the buffeting of the diffuse nebula material would be dangerous. Uhura attempted to contact the station numerous times without result. It's been 10 years, my guy. The nebula's brilliant shapes and patterns, seen from several dozen light years out, were now reduced to a constant transparent glow which bathed the Enterprise in dreamlike purple light. Kirk examined the readouts on the forward screen, not at all happy with what he saw. Spock stood at his side. The Enterprise was on alert, and the bridge was fully crewed. Mason stood near the elevator, recorder hovering nearby. "It looks like we've come here for nothing," Kirk said. Spock did not disagree. Grass laid over the display of the tiny planetoid which had once held Station 1 showed no signs of life whatsoever, and the Enterprise had scanned the world from all sides. Because worlds have sides. Unless there was a failure in the life support systems of the space station itself, Spock said, the condition of the planetoid gives us no reason to suspect any further harm could have come to them. "Then maybe they're shy," McCoy said. "Serious suggestions are what I need now, Bones." He glanced at Mason and was annoyed to find her noting his words on her pad. He was annoyed, in fact, that he was being recorded at all, but as McCoy had said often since their journey began, he alone was to blame for Mason's presence. He could have defied Starfleet. It probably would have resulted in fracas, hard words, in a fracas. A fracas? Okay. Hard words here and there, but he would have prevailed. No, he strongly suspected that he had an ulterior motive for wanting her aboard. Oh, really, Kirk? Did you?
We hadn't guessed.
If the monitors failed miserably, an objective observer would record the failure. That's not why he kept her on board, guys.
Yeah, that's why.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah, I didn't want it to fail.
And if he failed miserably. McCoy was in the middle of a sentence when Kirk resumed listening. "So I concur with Spock. There's no evidence the environment in the nebula was any harsher after the ignition than during." "Mr. Veblen," Kirk said. The computer officer stepped forward smartly. "What do our computers say? If you're asking for the results of the stochastic algorithm, I am. I haven't had much time to enter these findings, sir. I can do so, and the algorithm..."
Alice is barking.
Okay. "And the algorithm can be reselected. I'm curious to know what the algorithm came up with before we arrived. Sir, 3 possibilities were presented. 2 were clearly in error. Oh, Spock? Mr. Veblen is referring to the deviance which the computers themselves later rejected as unlikely. One referred to the takeover of the station by an outside force. The other considered the madness and suicide of the station members. Neither of these possibilities were taken seriously in the final selection."
I'm a little concerned.
"The third scenario is quite interesting, Captain," Veblen said. "One or more of the Vulcan researchers aboard the station has been affected by the Ibakra radiation. Vulcans are less capable of adapting to heavy doses of Ibakra," Spock said, "just as they are not as well suited to cold as humans are. Still, the differences are minor. And has suffered a mental breakdown, and the scenario diverges at this point. Either the other members of the team have likely been imprisoned, or, and this could be more likely, if we adjust the algorithm to the new findings, they have been murdered." Kirk frowned.
Sorry.
"I'm not sure I like your algorithm, Mr. Veblen. Spock, let's sweep the planetoid again. After that, a boarding party will assemble with full environmental gear and portable shields in the main transporter room." "May I go down with you?" Mason asked. Kirk looked at her sharply. "No," he said. "I'm not going down with the first team. Starfleet frowns on its commanders taking unnecessary risks." Kirk, that is literally all you do.
Mm-hmm. Everything.
But now you have somebody to watch you do it, and that can maybe tattle on you. "You may instruct one of the party in the use of your recorder, but we will not be responsible if it is lost or damaged." Mason nodded, somewhat relieved. Why? With the failure of the final sweep to locate any signs of life, Kirk met the boarding party in the transporter preparation area. The party consisted of 6 crew members, headed by the Chief of Security, Lieutenant Olas. Mason's recorder followed Olas rather like a puppy, so the recorder moves by itself. Olas regarded the device with amused embarrassment as Mason tuned and adjusted it for its new task. So it does. It follows like a puppy. That's weird. Why? I have so many questions. Okay, "This is to be a quick reconnaissance," Kirk said. "Mr. Devereaux will take the tricorder readings, and Mr. Mason's recorder will back up our observations. You will be down for less than 2 minutes. After that, you will automatically be returned to the ship. Anyone of you can signal for immediate return. You will be preceded by a transporter test device as usual. Mr. Shallert, release the TTD. Mr. Olas, assemble your team in the transporter. The TTD was beamed down first and reported that the interior of the station was environmentally normal and that the area appeared deserted. Temperature is 29 degrees Celsius, Captain, Shallert reported from the transporter controls. Oxygen level 23%. All other gases are expected for an operating life support system. Spock advanced to Kirk's side. The higher temperature is quite comfortable for Vulcans, Captain. 29 degrees. So 29 degrees, that's like 80 degrees. Fahrenheit.
Yeah, so times 1.8 plus 32
Yeah, Anton's from Canada, so we've been doing this conversion.
constantly.
Okay, see, I just looked at it because I was in Australia for like a month and I didn't know what 25 degrees Celsius was.
Yeah, it's
so-
about 80
Yeah.
something.
Okay, where was I?
Oh, real quick. So Derprex says Chekhov's phaser, which I thought was very funny. Clumpson says Kirk's going to get frustrated if he doesn't get just a little bit of danger soon as a treat. Texas says look up the song Grandpa Got Run Over by a John Deere. Good times. Ellery says me gets off work in time to catch stream. Natasha reads something about possible mass suicide. Me cat with the big eyes. And Texas just says this book is crazy. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah. Okay.
We're reading Star Trek
It was
Corona for
sometime
anybody
after
just coming in.
Celsius. You read the temperature.
Spock advanced to Kirk's side. The higher temperature is quite comfortable for Vulcans, Captain. Yes, Mr. Shallert, beam them down.
Why does they keep using like inches and then the one time that they use temperature, it's in Celsius?
I have no idea.
We need to be consistent.
Oh,
Guys.
we need answers. Is what we need.
The transporter wrapped the shapes of the party members in pulsing lines of disintegration, mapping and disassembling their bodies. Gradually, the lines shrank and the shapes were reduced to nothing. Shallert checked the stored form memories, then pulled the sliding switch which beamed them across 500 kilometers to the interior of the Station 1.
You can't use inches and kilometers
You cannot.
in the same book.
You can't.
I don't know. Like, I'm Canadian and we do both because
Because you have stupid Americans.
officially we're metric for everything. But because we do so much business
With stupid Americans.
With
with
Americans who don't wanna use it,
and
yeah.
like a lot of our lumber and stuff like that.
When I write scientific papers, I have to continuously use the metric system. I don't know what these people are talking about. This is not good fan fiction, Greg Bear. Okay.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Bear. Again, we do not want to come across like we are
All
saying
right.
anything disparaging
Yes,
to
yes.
somebody who died last month. But this book has a lot of space racism and space sexism in it, and we're very confused.
Okay.
Welcome, Ellery.
Could the station still be operating if all the researchers are dead? Mason asked Kirk. It's conceivable, he said, but not likely. Then why haven't you picked up any life signs? We'll know a lot more in just a few minutes, buddy. Patience is a virtue. No, literally, it says that. I did not make that up. Right, Spock? Spock stared stoically at the transporter control displays. Arrival signal has been sent, he said. They are in the station.
Okay, do you want me to read another on the hopes that we get some sort of accent?
Yeah, go for
Okay.
it. They only gave you like a page and a half.
Yeah, I think
There were no
everyone wants to
accents.
hear your glorious accents.
This is why I can't be a professional actor, guys. I can't do any accents. Chapter 10. A warm breeze pushed quietly through the empty corridor. After 10 years, the station was immaculate, everything in order, as if waiting for its guests to arrive. And arrive they did, in 6 beautiful columns of structured fire, lighting up the utilitarian gray walls and adding a faint electric smell to the clean, dry air. What? Fan out, Olas ordered. The team, I can give one of these things maybe Devereaux has a French accent. Okay. The team spread rapidly up and down the corridor. Ensign Devereaux aiming his tricorder in the prescribed patterns. Mason's recorder stayed close to Olas, humming faintly. Olas flipped open his communicator. Landing party to Enterprise. Olas reporting. Station appears to be in good shape. No signs of damage. Devereaux scanning. 1 minute 30 until return. He closed the communicator and inserted it into his belt. Let's move. The 6 ran in 2 groups of 3 to each end of the corridor. At one end, where Olas stood at ready, was a door leading to a storage chamber. The door was secured, but not locked. At the opposite end, the corridor branched into a T, each subsequent hallway ending in a bulkhead with an airtight hatch. Devereaux advanced quickly to the left end of the T and punched a standard code into the hatch controls. The hatch sighed and slid open.
Okay, you can go.
He aimed his tricorder into the space beyond and narrowly missed the head of a young Vulcan boy. "Hello," Radek said in perfect Federation English. Devereaux stared at him in astonishment. "Lieutenant!" he called out, stepping back. "Lieutenant Olas!" Radek, I don't know what that was.
What are you attempting?
French?
It does.
Really bad French. Radek. He offended the Russian.
Trying to check them off.
Scottish.
No, I think you're like
Offended the French.
you have such an amalgamated accent that you don't offend anyone anymore. I think you're good.
It's so
It's so amalgamated.
It's something.
follows his perfect
Regression.
Russian.
Radek held out his hands in greeting, but the transporter effect had already begun.
She's wait, really quick. Ellery says, Natasha, your French sounds like really offensive.
Some German.
Offended the Germans too. I'm checking them off. How many other countries do I have left?
Can you do an Italian accent?
Ooh.
It's the me.
Ethnic stereotype.
That's what this whole book is. Okay, Radek held out his hands in greeting, but the transporter effect had already begun. Their time was up. Again, they were transformed into pillars of fire and pulled back aboard the Enterprise as if it had been attached by a flexible string. The transporter grouped them together as they left, but Devereaux was hunched slightly, tricorder held out, and Olas had been caught in mid-run. He bounded from the platform and into Mason before he could recover. As he apologized, Mason's recorder switched its allegiance and returned to its former master, still humming. There are better words than that to use.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Oh no.
Okay. "There's a Vulcan child in the station," Devereaux said. "He speaks English, or at least he said hello."
We just committed to the bad German.
No, if there's anything we learned from Blog Brothers, is commit to the bit.
Yeah, commit.
Spock gently removed Devereaux's tricorder from his hands and played back the science data. "Your device shows no Vulcan, child or otherwise," Spock said. "Who else saw this child?" "I saw someone standing beyond Devereaux," said another member of the party, "but I couldn't see him clearly." Spock adjusted the tricorder and still came up with negative results. "Mr. Devereaux, please describe this Vulcan child." "I'm no expert, Mr. Spock, but he seemed about 12 years old, dark purple eyes, wearing a green uniform of some sort. He looked a bit like you." Spock lifted an eyebrow and glanced at Kirk. "The tricorder shows no life other than the landing party. I cannot presume Mr. Devereaux was hallucinating, Captain, because Deprala's son, Radek, would be about 15 years old. Are you holding hands?"
He was
I had to try to like recapture my breath and try to keep composure. Just
So I don't get murdered. Okay, cool.
no.
That's fair. That's fair. I cannot presume Mr. Devereaux is hallucinating, Captain, because Deprala's son, Radek, would be about 15 Earth years old and has dark purple eyes, unusual for a pure Vulcan. The landing party was issued no specific descriptions of station personnel. Mason scanned the contents of the recorder's immediate memory. "It was with the wrong guy," she said. "It should have been with Devereaux. There's nothing on visual, and if anybody said anything besides to the landing party, I can't hear it. I might be able to pull it out after enhancement." "No need," Miss Spock said. "The tricorder picked up no sound waves except for those from the landing party, nor was there any extra infrared or microwave radiation in the corridor, as might be expected in an actual living body." Oh, okay. It looked like there was a comma. There's not. "Living body had presented itself to Ensign Devereaux." "So I was chagrined?" "Not necessarily," Kirk said. "I'll expect your reports in 15 minutes in my quarters annex. Mr. Spock, I'll want you and Dr. McCoy and Mr. Veblen there in 15 minutes also." He turned to Mason. "You're welcome to come, needless to say." "I wouldn't miss it," Mason said. "A haunted station. Wouldn't miss it for a lifetime supply of filters." What?
I'm sure that one lands on Yalbo really
Yeah.
well. It plays to a
Yeah.
Yalbo crowd.
Yeah.
For the first time in 9 years, Drake became aware of a separate existence. He looked down at his body and stretched out his arms, and then brought his hands closer to his face. Oh yes, there were memories, but the memories weren't his alone. Drake. He turned and saw T'Prala. or Chaprila? How did we say that? Anyways, he extended one hand and they touched fingers with what, for Vulcans, amounted to deep passion. We haven't been apart, T'Prala said, some confusion evident. Yet we have been separated. Where are the children, and where are Anuak and Takosa? I remember them. We were all together. Yet not. They stood in the middle of the research dome, surrounded by jumbled mounds of reassembled equipment. The devices they had used to chart the birth of the protostars had been inactive for 9 years, most of their parts scavenged and used to create the engineer's nightmare, which filled the dome. What is your last memory? Your own memory. Radek and Tarouse were together. Grake hesitated. Grake, yeah. Telling us we were not going to be hurt, just adapted, T'Prala finished. And so we have been. How much time has passed? Why call us back? Grake gestured at the massed machinery. We must destroy this immediately. Vulcans don't don't show emotion. Why is there an exclamation mark at the end of this sentence, Greg Bear?
Maybe it's just loud.
Real quick, Ellery says, not only is it bad German, it's bad German grandmother. And then Ellery also says, quote, together yet not, unquote, me explaining my relationship status.
Radek appeared out of nothing in front of them. Honored parents, he said, it is necessary to return the station to normal operations. My son, Grake said, what have we been doing in Mount Axpra? It must stop now. Grake held out his hand to Radek. The boy looked at his father's outstretched fingers, blinked slowly, like a cat. It doesn't say that. Then turned away. Much has been accomplished, he said. We are grateful to you, but we have guests now. Those that you summoned 10 years ago have finally arrived. There is a ship, T'Prala asked. A large and well-armed ship, Radek said. A group of humans appeared in the Reshek corridor. The station's sections were named according to the symbols of the Vulcan alphabet, of which Reshek was the third. Good to know. Where are they? T'Prala asked. They returned before I could do more than greet them. Why were no Vulcans among them, Mother? T'Prala approached her son, or the image of her son, she did not know which, and slowly reached for his shoulders with her hands. She'll find out. She grasped solid flesh, covered with perfectly tangible green cloth.
Real boy!
The same children's uniform Radek had worn for a decade, but altered to fit his growing body. Okay.
What? Okay.
There isn't much time, she said. These are our rescuers. We sent them a distress signal. They will not leave until they have discovered what happened and corrected the situation. Or until they have taken us all away. Radek's eyes widened with alarm. That would be horrible, he said. We must stay. Why? Grake asked. It is not for you to know yet, Radek said. But they have seen you. They know we are here. They have seen me, but they know nothing else. They do not know anybody else is alive on the station. We have masked everything, and we have not replied to their messages. Why so devious? Grake asked. What? Why so devious? They are here for our good. Not so. The good is realized by our staying here, by continuing our work, not by leaving. We do not need to be rescued. Who are you? T'Prala asked suddenly. Radek focused his eyes on her coldly. There was no hint of affection, only a curious kind of heightened interest. I am your son, he said. Where is Tarouse? She is involved in work. You must cooperate with us. And the others? They are well. They work with us, just as you have. We cannot cooperate, Greg said slowly, circling his son. The boy followed him from the corners of his eyes, his body betraying no sign of tension. You hold us prisoner. You allow us no freedom, no true participation. You make us your slaves, and you tell us nothing. This cannot be tolerated. You are not behaving as a son should. Because I have higher duties now, Radek said. You do not choose to cooperate? No, T'Prala said. There was no use lying. They could hide nothing from this form of Radek, whatever he was. From this form of Radek? Okay. Then we have no choice but to adapt you again. There is no harm. Grake's arm shot out for his son's shoulder, fingers and thumb configured to pinch a sensitive nerve and render the boy unconscious. But Radek vanished even as his fingers closed. His voice whispered in the air around them. I am sorry, my parents. It doesn't sound like it. T'Prala watched in horror as Grake's face grew rigid, then softened. All resistance vanished in her husband's features. Then her own will seemed to melt, and she was returned to the undifferentiated state in which they had both spent the past 9 years. Deep inside, however, below all the carefully neutered, civilized levels and the regions of her personality that emulated in violent Vulcan figures of the past, T'Prala hated and fought and screamed with rage.
Oh.
Mr. Veblen, I have to say I don't place much trust in your stochastic algorithm. Still, since nothing else seems to make much sense, what do the new versions tell us? Kirk sat in his favorite chair, a worn, manually operated Delkin he had purchased while on shore leave some years ago.
What's a Delkin?
I don't know. I thought you would know.
Cool. I don't know.
Okay.
On the cabin's more modern conference chairs sat Spock, Veblen, McCoy, Ensign Devereaux, Lieutenant Olas, and Mason, who carried a simple voice recorder. I hope Devereaux speaks again. Sir, Veblen,
I think we all do.
Yeah, we all do.
The computers suggest the algorithms are not appropriate at this point. We are close to having information we can use to find out what really happened. Oh, how close are we? Kirk turned to Spock. Are the enhancements any help? Whatever Ensign Devereaux saw in the station corridor, it does not register on the tricorder. In Mr. Mason's opinion, to the contrary, we are fortunate the tricorder was present and not her own press equipment. The tricorder is far more diversified and sensitive. Mr. Devereaux? Oh, yes.
Oh no. Oh god.
The picture of the boy. He was only 3 years old at the time the record was made. I can't be positive. But it does resemble the older boy I saw in the station. Spock, any chance there would be other Vulcan children on the station by now? Not of that age, Captain. Of course. So how does Radek become a disembodied that he doesn't show up on the tricorder? There is only one way to find out, Captain. We must send down another landing party. Spock, I've been known to take risks, but I'm not sure that's one I want to take right now. Uhura's voice broke in over the comm. Captain, a signal from the Station 1 has come in. Kirk sat up. Relay, Lieutenant. With visual, Captain. Kirk reached over and activated his cabin screen. The image was hazy at first, but quickly sharpened. Kirk recognized Drake immediately. The Vulcan looked tired, but sounded as enthusiastic as possible for a Vulcan. This is Researcher Drake on Black Box Nebula Station 1. I wish to speak to the captain of the Federation Starship Enterprise. I'm Captain James T. Kirk. We're relieved to see you alive and well, Drake. We've had some alarming moments on your station. Yes, my son informed me. I apologize for the confusion. We have been rather isolated here, and all of our communications equipment has been deactivated to transfer power to other projects. We are all indeed well, Captain, with the exception, unfortunately, of our colleagues in suspended animation. Tell him we have to come down soon, McCoy said. Request permission to enter your station and carry out our orders, Kirk said. We are acting on your distress call, Drake. Yes, of course. It has been a very long time, Captain, even for Vulcans. Much has changed, and some of the changes may be startling. May I suggest that only essential personnel be sent down first? Of course. Spock, myself, and Dr. McCoy will be in the second landing party. Of course he will. Yes, how marvelous. T'Prala and I will be very pleased to see Spock again, and of course all of you have been long awaited. Kirk glanced at Spock, who was out of range of the console cameras. His first officer's expression was troubled, verging on a frown. Please give us proper coordinates, Drake, Kirk said, so we won't interfere with any of your, projects. Drake read them transporter coordinates and repeated his gladness at seeing them, then signed off. Spock, Kirk asked when the screen had gone dark. Something wrong? I cannot be sure, Captain. I knew Drake only briefly, and that more than 20 years ago. And? I must inspect the situation more closely before I voice any hypothesis. It's hypotheses, but I mean, okay. That's plural for a hypothesis. I know these things because I wrote scientific papers, Greg Bear.
I went to college, Greg.
I went to graduate school, Greg. What did you do? I'm sorry, you're dead. I'm sorry. But you probably are better off wherever you are. His look said, in a way that Kirk was quite capable of
To be clear, you're meaning it's better than this life. You don't mean
don't leave this life, but if you have already left this life, I'm hoping it's better.
That's, yeah. Okay.
Continue.
Yes, his look said, in a way that Kirk was quite capable of interpreting, that a Vulcan could maintain a record for accurate observations only if not pressed at a premature moment. Very well. Thank you, Ensign. Mr. Olas. Sorry, not Olaf. Rowena, you'll be allowed on the planetoid as soon as we decide it is safe. Who's Rowena?
The
Mason.
Oh,
Mason.
she has a first name. I
We
forgot.
just keep calling her Mr. Mason, so we forgot.
The second party will transport as soon as Dr. McCoy has assembled his equipment. I'll be ready in 10 minutes, Captain, McCoy said. I'll want Nurse Chapel with me.
Let's just take all the essential people off the Enterprise and put them all in immediate danger. That sounds like a grand idea.
Fine. When he was alone in his quarters, Kirk played back the message and searched Greg's face for closely, trying to find what Spock had found, something so vague and uncertain that Vulcan couldn't yet express. The Vulcan couldn't yet express. Kirk sensed something too. Something very disturbing.
Excellent.
Okay, so before
Bravo.
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 All right, before Anton starts again, let me catch you up with chat. So Ellery says, "quote We are grateful to you, but we have guests now. Feels vaguely insulting, but admittedly, I arrived late and don't fully know the context of this." And then Clump says, "Wait, there's context in this novel?" And Ellery says, "I don't know. I literally been here 15 minutes." And Clump says, "I like the world tour of accents we're being treated to." And Ellery says, "Same, TBH." And Paulo says, "Same. I've traveled the world more today than most of a lifetime. At least 10 countries."
Sometimes at the same time.
Sometimes at the same time. Derp says, "You're better up in hell, Greg." No. We're very sad that Greg is gone. We just have questions about his book.
So far as we know.
That's good faith versus bad faith criticism. We're happy.
We're gonna give him the.
We're happy.
He's at peace, I'm hoping.
We're
Yeah, we're gonna
hoping
give him
that he is happy and at peace.
We're gonna give him the benefit of the doubt that this was
And
the
not-
80s, that he improved
Writing any more novels.
or
And then
got
Clump
better
says
at
he
writing.
passed away from several strokes, which is very
Oh,
sad.
that is sad.
And we're very sorry to hear that. And then Ellery says, "I know this author is dead, but like his book reads like he wrote this by typing the first three words of each chapter, followed by hitting the middle button and predictive text."
Yeah. He probably
We got some. It was before predictive text, but
I bet he made it though. I bet he invented it. Nobody gave him that.
Yeah, nobody gave him that credit.
No.
We're very concerned.
It's what is?
It's 7:09.
When do you have to go?
When do we want to go to?
I mean, I have to leave at 8,
okay.
so I can get home and go to
Okay,
sleep.
so I'll do one, then you finish off one more.
Love it.
'cause-
That should put us at about halfway in the
Yeah,
book, and then I'll
'cause I
read the
think-
other half on another.
Yeah, 'cause
another...
I think you started.
Now you have to do the really bad accents.
Oh God, I can't possibly.
I wonder if
I'll keep trying for
okay.
Scotty though.
Let's see if I have.
Scotty,
any
you're great on.
accents.
I'm good on none of them, so it's,
I wonder if I have any accents in this one.
I
Oh,
hope
no.
you do.
I guess I'll find out.
You'll do way better than I
You
did.
can assign accents if you don't know.
I have left the bar very low.
Okay, chapter 11. McCoy was in a fever of activity. He ordered the nurses about sharply, efficiently, his southern drawl becoming so pronounced that occasionally he had to repeat his order to be understood, which exasperated him no end.
To no end. We're missing a word there, but that's fine.
It's fine.
The Tarek analyzer, a box about a foot on each side, waited on its floating pallet as other medical supplies were added, including the Tarek remote probe, a diagnostics tricorder, and McCoy's, quote, little black bag. A customized general practice unit now equipped for the Vulcan inhabitants of Station 1. Mason watched and recorded and did her best to stay out of his way. Not that McCoy would have said a harsh word to her. Already she felt a very father-daughter relationship blossoming between them, though few words had been said.
So she doesn't want to bang McCoy. Good to know.
Okay. As long as the feeling is mutual, that's fine. As long as like one of them isn't interested in the other one, and the other one's like, "Wow, he's like my dad." Then I have questions, but continue. Sorry.
She wondered if it was her gamin personality
I've never heard that word before.
that attracted McCoy, but
Gamin?
suspected it was her small planet girl handicap. The pallet, full to overflowing, was rushed by a harried ensign to the elevator. McCoy followed.
Gammon is attractively boyish.
Attractively boyish, so like the
A young woman with a mischievous, boyish charm.
Oh, a young woman with a mischievous voice. Okay.
Or a female street urchin.
so I guess like the whole like tomboy thing.
Yeah. Apparently, but she
Hot
also
tomboys.
Hot
but
tom-
she thinks that of him like her daddy. So I mean,
Okay.
Okay.
McCoy
Moving on.
followed Chapel and Chapel and Toe as both donned pocket-studded
medical field jackets. He handles that pallet like it was a mule, McCoy undertoned, passing Mason. Mason grinned and fell in behind. In the transporter room, Kirk and Spock were strapping on their security belts and phasers as McCoy and Chapel entered and positioned the pallet over its disc on the platform. Shallert stood ready at the controls. When Kirk and Spock were in position, they were joined by Chekhov, who doubled as part of Olaus's security team. Shallert switched on the transporter. McCoy muttered something beneath his breath until his eye caught Mason's, and he flashed a brave and utterly false smile. "Let's go, Shallert," Kirk said. Shallert initiated beaming. While in the transporter beam, there is no sensation of time or event. At the most, one feels a slight tickle at the base of the neck. Dr. McCoy cannot explain this, but the sensation is experienced at least once by anyone who has ever been transported. Rumors of spiritual experiences of the feeling that one has died and returned to life, or seen what lies beyond death, or even more pervasive rumors of those who have the talent to see the future while being transported, have never been substantiated. And yet, Spock, the least likely to put any credence into such rumors, feels a touch, the merest feathery whisper of inquiry, as if the scattered particles will reassemble as himself are being individually examined. "Spock! Spock!" They stood in the broad equipment storage dome of Station 1, clustered around Spock, who lay flat on his back, not moving. Kirk bent over his first officer while McCoy checked the Vulcan's pulse at his armpit. Spock's eyes fluttered and he turned his head. The first face he saw was that of Radek, watching him with curious interest from behind the larger forms of Greg and T'Pryla. "Jim, I want that transporter torn apart to top to bottom," McCoy said softly. "I've never liked that thing, and so help me, I'll shut it down." "Done. Spock, are you okay?" "I do not seem to be injured," Spock said. Getting to his feet with McCoy's help, the dome interior was empty. The flat gray aggregate flooring marked by pressure and skid marks where supplies had once rested. Kirk flipped open his communicator and ordered a thorough maintenance check on the transporter. "Am I the only one affected?" Spock asked. "I'm fine," Chapel said, aiming the diagnostic tricorder at Spock's chest. Chekhov agreed that he, too, felt no ill effects. Kirk turned to the group awaiting them. "I apologize for a very clumsy arrival," he said, "but it appears to be a minor problem. I'd like to introduce the ship's doctor and his assistant, Dr. Leonard McCoy, and Lieutenant Christine Chapel. I'm Captain James Kirk, and this is Ensign Chekhov. And this, as I'm sure you're aware," he said to Prella, "is my first officer and the science officer of the Enterprise, Commander Spock." "Welcome to the Black Box Nebula, Captain," T'Pryla said, extending her hand. Her grip on Kirk's hand was firm and dry, warmer than Spock's. "If it is possible for the members of such a small team to welcome anyone to such a vast territory, my husband has already extended his appreciation, and I wish to reiterate, I am T'Pryla. This is our assistant physicist, Anok." The Vulcan male divided the fingers of one hand in the traditional greeting. "This is his clanmate, Takosa, and our son Radek, whom some of your crew have already met. Our daughter, Taras, is involved in a project at this time. Our first priority is to give all of you a thorough medical exam," McCoy said. "That will not be necessary," Greg said, nodding graciously at McCoy. "We have an excellent medical center here. I'm afraid those who most need your help are quite beyond it." "If you're referring to the sleepers," McCoy said, "we may be able to save them. And as for your health, Starfleet regulations require that I make my own judgment." "Dr. McCoy is right," Kirk said. "And while he and Nurse Chapel are doing that, I'd like to begin debriefing." "Of course," T'Pryla said. "Anything we can do to oblige our rescuers, though we must warn you, the situation is not nearly as desperate as it seemed when we issued our distress signal." McCoy asked to be taken to their medical facilities. Greg led the way, and Kirk turned to Spock and Chekhov. I want to keep an eye on Radek, he said when the others were out of hearing. Is there... Oh. Is there... Whoa. Oh, whoa.
I believe in you.
Okay, let's do this. Is there anything wrong with boy? Chekhov asked, puzzled. He isn't a ghost. Just watch him. Yes, sir. Kirk took a deep breath and motioned for Spock and Chekhov to come along. Spock was interested in Kirk's tone of voice. As usual, Kirk was attuned to the same incongruities as the first officer, though he reacted quite differently, with an irritated, almost angry brusqueness. Brusqueness.
Briskness?
Brusqueness?
Who knows?
Brusqueness?
Brusqueness?
Brusqueness? Spock, he said, I seem to recall that this dome was supposed to be full of emergency supplies. It is so described in the inventory of Station 1, Spock said. Then where is all of it now? Would they have used it all by now? It is conceivable, Captain, though not if damage was as low as we're being led to believe. They walked to the hatch leading out of the corridor storage dome and into the Reshek corridor. What does your tricorder say about Radek? Spock held up the instrument and showed Kirk the readout. He's a quite normal 15-year-old Vulcan boy. His data are very distinct. Kirk nodded and increased his walking speed. Chekhov broke into a short run to catch up. The station medical center had been altered drastically. McCoy looked around in dismay at the barely concealed evidence of tampering, rebuilding of equipment, removal of furniture, and diagnostic machines. This place is a shambles, he said to Chapel. What in God's name happened here? Greg stepped forward and removed an unfamiliar chromium sphere from a plain black metal box. Takosa has made important advances. This is the only device we use for medical attention now. The rest of the equipment, wherever possible, has been converted to help us with our research. He handed McCoy the chromium sphere. It weighed at almost a pound and had no visible surface features. It is quite easy to use. I highly recommend it. How? McCoy began. If there is a medical problem, the device diagnoses the problem and cures it upon request. It responds to Vulcan now, but it would only take a moment's effort to have it respond to Federation English. I'm more familiar with my own equipment, McCoy says. Thanks, but I'll stick with that for the time being. He gestured at the pallet of medical supplies. I'll examine the children first. Could you bring Taras here? And while we're waiting for her boy... So he smiled and crooked a finger at Radek. The boy stepped forward and submitted to Chapel's quick pass of the diagnostic tricorder over him. Greg went to a wall-mounted comm terminal and spoke a few words of Vulcan into it. McCoy dug into the contents of his bag and brought out the subcutane, loading it with a vial of nutrients and vitamins. Radek pulled away from Chapel as McCoy wielded the automatic syringe from the boy's arm. No! Radek protested. McCoy put on his most soothing expression. It's quite painless, just a warm pressure. My son is saying that supplements or any other medications are unnecessary, and I'm saying that it's my duty. Never mind, Bones, Kirk said, entering the medical center. A step behind him was a slender young Vulcan girl, perhaps 2 years junior to Radek, walking hand in hand with Spock. Chekhov maneuvered through the door around them. Jim, there are regulations I have to follow if we're going to interact with the personnel. I have Taras's guarantee that the staff of Station 1 is healthy. McCoy regarded Kirk with pained confusion. The girl, her straight and flawless black hair cut shoulder length, let go of Spock's hand and stood beside Takosa. We have done remarkable things here, the girl said, and you may require a little time to get used to them. Until then, please do not force your regulations upon us. You may examine as you wish, but we are quite capable of treating ourselves. McCoy recovered his decorum almost immediately. Then, if I'm allowed, I'd better see to the people in cold storage. That is, unless I'm preempted there too. We do not object to your efforts, Takosa said. For us, they have been dead 10 years. Yikes. That's what I was afraid you'd say, McCoy muttered, as Takosa made a move to come with McCoy and Chapel. The doctor stopped her by holding up his hand. The captain needs you here more than I do. If nothing's been changed, we should do just fine by ourselves. Then we will begin formal debriefing right away, Taprala said. There's so much to tell, and so many records to show. Even as they gather in the room where meals are shared, Taprala struggles to find her own memory of the past 10 years. She cannot control her speech or her actions, but perhaps she can recall all that has happened as she witnessed it. But it is confused. There was a construction of the transformer, completed without the aid of any of the adults, using equipment in the storage dome. And the memories that are mixed, not hers alone. Although she does recall the wonder and terror of her realization that her own small children had accomplished something beyond the ability of the most brilliant Vulcan engineers. Will the rescuers be told of the transformer or of the Eye to Stars? McCoy and Chapel stood in the cylindrical cold room, wearing environmental packs that projected a curtain of warmth around them. The helium atmosphere outside the shimmering curtains was a brisk negative 260 degrees. The temperature with the hibernacula suspended above the chamber was only a few degrees above absolute zero. McCoy had examined the freezing and revival equipment, and everything seemed to be in order. Chapel went from hibernaculum to hibernaculum, taking detailed tricorder readings. McCoy checked the last available medical records of the individuals suspended in the cold room and compared them with Chapel's finding. As he expected, the individuals had aged perhaps 1 hour in 10 years, and yet were all clinically dead. The myelin sheathing on virtually all of their nerves had broken down under unprecedented levels of Yubakara radiation. McCoy had a bizarre vision of what would happen if they were revived now. The hibernacula would open on cue, and the people within would try to move. Each would experience a horrible, agonizing convulsion, but within seconds they would be isolated from their misery and from life itself.
Oh my god.
Wake them up just to have them die.
Jeez.
Wake them up inside.
Wake me up.
I thought I had them licked, but those damned medical monitors are going to fight us every step of the way, McCoy said. Or I'm back on the farm playing OBGYN to the chickens. Chapel suppressed a smile by looking at the cold, frozen face of one of the 30 suspended team members. These people are technically dead, and I'm not going to be allowed to play God. I'm not going to be allowed to play God by bringing them back to life. Yes, but they're not physically dead, Chapel said. Not yet. Hell, they've been dead for 10 years. Total nerve damage through and through. That's one of the definitions of irreversible death fed into the monitors. It hardly matters that they're very well preserved. But can we save them? I mean, is it possible? McCoy shook his head. Only if I play Clarence Darrow to a robot with a tin ear for rhetoric. According to Drake, the station had been swept for months by intense and intermittent storms of radiation. The planetoid had been propelled a few degrees from its former position by fierce particle bombardment. Fortunately, the station had been in the planetoid's shadow for most of the violent buffeting, and they had spent the first 2 months in a shelter proofed against all harmful radiation but Yubakara. Sensors on the other side of the planetoid had fed the researchers the data they required to determine the position and spectral type of the new stars. Initially, there had been 18 possible protoclouds in their section of the nebula, but at least 7 of them, those most likely to begin fusion, had been disrupted and destroyed by their precocious siblings. That was just as well, Greg said, though with some hint of regret in his voice. We could have used more data on other starbirths, but our time in the shelter was running out, and the particle bombardment would probably have killed us. When the situation had stabilized and stars had settled on their path to the main sequence, the researchers had emerged from the storage. The researchers had emerged from the shelter to discover that their comrades in cold storage have been severely injured. The hibernacula are heavily shielded against most forms of radiation, Takosa explained. We were not prepared for so much Yubakara and believed that proximity to the planetoid would keep levels down. There is no other way to shield against Yubakara. We could have done nothing more anyway. Spock intercepted Kirk's glance but said nothing, and Kirk likewise kept his counsel. We were able to repair most of the damage to the station and to resume our work, Greg said. We realized we could never use substation radio to communicate with the Federation. Since the presence of the mass anomalies, the Yubakara would totally block all fraction space transmissions. So I set about creating a very powerful tight beam radio signal transmitter. I knew the location of a Federation buoy beyond the boundaries of the black box, but only approximately, since our position had been changed and our view of other stars was obscured by expanding nebula gas clouds. I was able to send the signal. Radek looked up from the table at Spock. We assumed the message was only partially intercepted. Yes, Spock said. We received a fair amount of science data, but very little of Greg's audiovisual transmission. That, too, is for the best. We were pessimistic about our chances, and the message may have caused undue alarm. As it is, we have done quite well, and we have made significant advances in our understanding, not only about stellar processes, but about physics in general. We will soon be able to show you our new research center, perhaps after Dr. McCoy has finished with the sleepers. We may have problems rescuing your people quickly, Kirk said. We were not prepared to take on such a large job. It could take weeks. There is also some doubt that the nebula has stabilized, Spock said. We strongly recommend you all come aboard the Enterprise and return with us to the nearest starbase as soon as we've transported the sleepers. Radek shook his head once firmly, and Greg did likewise. That is impossible, Spock, T'Pryla said. There can be no interruptions in our work. We do not require rescuing, as you can plainly see. And if the nebula should be agitated again, we have survived once. We are much more prepared now. You will better comprehend how safe we are when you've seen the research dome. We do not misunderstand, Radek said. We have been out here, out of touch with everyone, doing our work, T'Pryla continued, as if on cue from her son. To have fellow beings with us to compare our findings with the work of other scientists, with what has been happening in the Federation in the last 10 years, is marvelous. She looked at Spock with an expression that, on a human face, would have been interpreted as stern. Spock lifted an eyebrow and withdrew a data pack from his belt pouch. I anticipated such an aid, he said, handling the pack to T'Pryla. Here you will find all the research results published in your fields of interest. There has been considerable progress in understanding subspatial mass anomalies. He paused. And there has been much change in Spiorna on Vulcan. T'Pryla did not react to Spock's last bit of information. She took the proffered pack and passed it to Drake. In return, we have prepared a report on our protostar and Yubakara studies. Severely edited. How quickly can sleepers be moved to the Enterprise? For the moment, we can only beam up 6 at a time, Kirk said, and reconstruct 2 a week. We're investigating rigging the shuttlecraft to ferry the hibernacula, but even that would take time and present some risks. And for that reason, he thought we could certainly use a little bit more cooperation. ...
Oh my god, that was an insanely
That was a
chapter.
long chapter.
Yeah.
Okay, so chat.
And I only got one chance to do Chekhov voice.
I like the Chekhov voice though.
His checkout voice, not mine. Mine's a bastardization of.
I mean, mine's
Everything
bad too.
wrong.
I'll try for
I mean,
Chekhov.
mine was like very stereotypical.
Yeah, well,
Russian.
mine, it's better than being bastardization.
All right. So far we're about halfway. We're at page 88. Ellery says, so a homeless tomboy based on the definition, referring to that definition of that girl.
Yeah.
Clump says, a lot of antiquated terms, but this book was written in the late 1900s with the face. And then Rachel came in and said, "Oh yay, Natasha's here." Also, hi everyone. That was also Rachel. Clump said sup to Rachel. Ellery said, "Not gonna lie, when you said Chekhov doubled as, my brain tried really hard to convince me the next word you were going to say would be a gun." The boy Derp Rex says, "Boys can't be friends with girls thing is BS anyway," and shows this and as shown in this stream, 3 good friends reading a book with friends around the US and the world. Oh, it's true. Ellery says gender is a social construct much like time, Derprex. Clumpson says when Kirk says he wants to debrief, it means something else.
Oh my god.
Then Ellery says, "When did Pepsi start tasting like a combo of rust and ass?" That's just Pepsi, Ellery. I'm sorry. Ellery says, "Sorry, I got takeout, and this is the first time I've had Pepsi in like 15 years." Rachel says, "Pepsi is good to, in my opinion, but I get what you mean, Ellery. It does kind of taste like rust." I've always said it tasted like rubbing alcohol and sadness. Pepsi.
Yeah.
So my Pepsi sponsorship goes out the window, you know?
Oh, you can't be the drink of the new generation.
Nah.
Can't bring it to police officers at a protest.
At a protest and solve racism. But Coca-Cola hit me up.
My brother works at Coca-Cola.
Ellery says, "I was expecting it to be sweeter." Clump says, I feel like death for years too. Can't write them all.
He does actually work for Coca-Cola. I wasn't lying about that.
Hashtag zombies with depression. You good, Clump? Yeah, are you okay, Clump? I hope you're okay. And Patrick shows up and says, "Star Trek! If you like Star Trek, you're gonna hate this. I'm so sorry."
But you're gonna love our interpretation.
Of course, everyone in chat is very precious and important.
Yes.
Patrick, it's not just Star Trek, it's unreasonably unhinged Star Trek.
It's true.
Yes.
And then Paula says, "With accents." And Patrick says, "Awesome. Who sent the Star Trek book?" This is actually Natasha's book that she's been letting me borrow for forever to do something with it. And now that we're doing read streams, and we were able to do have Anton and Natasha here to do this one, I figured they could help reading through part of this one. Ellery says, "How could I forget the accents?" Ellery, "My brain trying to comprehend this medical jargon, but it feels like it's just word soup." It is.
And it's not even accurate word soup, by the way.
"I like the first Star Trek book, See Spock Run." All right.
How long is it? Oh, just 4.
Just 4 pages. This will be our last chapter, since Natasha has to get off, and then I will finish the rest of the book in a subsequent stream. So just to keep you guys posted on what the plan is. By the way, before I start reading, can I just say we hit 4,000 subscribers?
Yay!
Just now. I think we're at 4,00001 as of.
Everybody put like those emoji, those like. Whatever
Everyone likes my
emojis.
accents. They
Oh,
just
yeah.
knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at
The
4,001
sex bots
right
and the
now.
accents.
The sex
Yeah, I
bots and
suppose-
the accents. Isn't that what this is? What streaming is all about? Sounds like SpaghettiOs. Derp says. Word salad SpaghettiOs. Yeah, congrats. Thanks, Clump. Yeah. So let me read this last chapter so that for now we can all be released, but we'll all know in our
We got
hearts
about
and
halfway
minds.
through.
We did get halfway through, so I only have to
And-
read the other half next time.
And we got halfway around the world too.
We did.
Oh, with all of
Natasha's
the accents.
Yeah.
I bastardized 4 and somehow took you guys on around the world in less than an hour.
Thanks, Ellery. Thanks, guys.
Around the world in 80 minutes.
Yes.
I appreciate you guys. On a serious note, I appreciate everybody here that's helped us get to 4,000. 4,000 is a lot.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. I was at a concert and there were like 1,500 people there, and I was having like an existential crisis.
The Arizona Coyotes, the NHL hockey team, is at a temporary stadium in ASU, and I think that one only seats 4,000 people.
So it's the ASU Stadium is
yes.
this channel. That's
Yes.
really cool. Thanks, Paulo. Thank you so much. Paulo sent a super chat of $5.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, chapter 12. The Tarek Analyzer, at McCoy's request, sent its remote probe around the cold storage chamber for a second time before returning a final answer. McCoy and Chapel waited outside the cylindrical cold chamber, watching through the glass port as the probe floated from hibernaculum to hibernaculum. calculating the mass and complexity of each of the 30 frozen researchers. The remote probe acted as a scan-only transporter with neither the power nor the equipment to actually disintegrate and reintegrate anything. It fed us results. Oh, I'm yawning. Sorry. It fed us results. My brain is melted by this book. To the analyzer, which considered the situation and decided what the Tarek was capable of doing, particularly and legally. McCoy had a few doubts what the answer would be. Slow as molasses, he grumbled. He's got a really thick accent though, right? Slow as molasses.
They say he does, but we've watched it, and he doesn't really have that thick of an accent.
He doesn't really. He's got like a little bit of a drawl.
He is from Georgia, though. The actor grew up in Georgia.
Georgia accents are very mild. I was telling Anton this before. Like, yeah. I have and you have a Georgia accent, and it's very, very mild.
I guess it depends where in Georgia, though. Like, if you're in the Appalachians,
or if you're in
Savannah.
Atlanta,
but, you
accents, probably.
As a whole, like, compared to other Southern accents, I feel like they can be a lot more, like...
Right. But I guess it also depends on, like, like racial or ethnic group and community that you've grown up in as well.
That's true. It is true. There's a lot of different factors.
I grew up as a singer, so I had my accent beaten out of me, and it's come back marginally throughout the years.
Mine comes out when I'm tired or stressed, which I joke is all the time.
I was gonna say, isn't that all the time for us?
It gets particularly worse when it's like midnight and it's cold and we want to go home. We're on set. He grumbled, pulling up a seat and squatting with the back pulled to his chest. So like a substitute teacher. Legs straddled on either side. Chapel stood by the port, arms crossed with her hands gripping her shoulders. Just looking in there makes me feel frozen, she said. 10 years in cold storage. Yes, and even without Yabaka, I don't think there's been such a prolonged freeze in a century. They were only supposed to be in there 2 or 3 years until the preliminary work had been done by T'Prala and her people. I wonder what it would be like to work with Vulcans. I mean, almost everybody being Vulcan but you. There were 4 humans in cold storage. All the rest were Vulcans. They were volunteers. I suppose they knew what they were getting into. What is this Vulcan hate? Oh yeah, in case you're just coming in, there's a lot of human superiority in this book. We're not down with that.
Yeah, we don't condone it.
Yeah, we don't condone this book. The writer apparently passed away recently, and we're very sad to hear that, but we don't necessarily condone this book. From what Spock says, T'Prala isn't exactly your straightforward Vulcan. She's even odder than Spock, not that you'd notice. Okay, cool. Whatever. Analysis completed, said the analyzer. Well, let's have it, McCoy urged impatiently. These individuals have all suffered severe nerve damage in cold storage. They are legally dead. The Tarek units is forbidden by its monitors from reviving beings who are dead by the definition established for each category of being. Damn, McCoy said. There would be practical difficulties as well, since the bodies can only be transported once without suffering even more severe damage due to the dangers of transporting deep frozen specimens. And since therefore they must be fed directly... Oh my god. And therefore, since they must be fed directly into the Tarek, only 6 may be transported at a time. The Tarek can hold 2 form memories for resurrecting and 4 in auxiliary banks. Yes, we know all that. If we have to, we can bring them all up on the shuttle, though Scotty alone knows how we'll rig the power supplies and safeguards. Show me a profile on the typical case for Vulcans and humans. The analyzer displayed a multi-dimensional chart in 3 separations, giving and the scanning results for the Vulcan and human. The doctor stared at these results for a moment, repeated the display, and frowned. Something isn't right here. The bodies have been tampered with, or I'm greatly mistaken. Dun dun dun. But that doesn't make sense. Maybe the probe needs adjusting. McCoy shut off the analyzer and rested his chin on his crossed wrist. Ooh. In the station mess...
How do you rest your chin on your crossed wrist?
Yeah, there you go. We're all trying to do it.
Okay.
In the station mess, Kirk was not encouraged by McCoy's expression when the doctor and Chapel returned. If the transporters are working properly, we can move up the 6 patients now. The rest we may be able to transport in the shuttle. Either way, it'll take us 15 weeks to reconstruct the people in cold storage. The major problem is whether we can work... Sorry, did I break something?
No.
Okay.
I just moved.
The major problem is whether we can work our way around the monitors. They're going to block it. Kirk's asked. McCoy pursed his lips and lifted his hand. Hold on a minute. We're not out yet. Just down. We have to return the ship and discuss strategy. Since these people are all in prime physical condition and don't seem to need us right away, I presume that's allowed? We have completed our first debriefing, Spock said. I believe it would be useful to return to the Enterprise. We can be replaced by a security team. Radek protested. We have no need for protection. It's part of our regulations, Kirk said. The boy irritated him. Station 1 is now in extended status.
Shut up, Radek.
Shut up, kid.
Nobody wants to know what you want to think.
There has to be a team in the station at all times. He flipped open the communicator. Kirk to Enterprise. Enterprise, Uhura here, Captain. Enterprise, Uhura here, Captain. How does the transporter check out? Uhura brought Scott on the line.
Captain.
Captain? There's been not a thing wrong with it. It's the prime condition. Any explanation for what happened to Mr. Spock? No, sir. But I cannot blame the machines. My crews have been over them 4 times.
You are amazing at this.
It's really bad. I'm sorry if you're actually from
so
Scotland.
good.
I mean, it definitely
It
leans more Irish.
It does lean Irish because that's where
But-
I do
But,
have
like,
some
it is-
Scottish family, but
yeah.
most of them are Irish.
But
And
yeah, it's
mine sounded British with a touch of God knows what else.
But thank you very much. Will you guarantee my atoms won't be spread over known space? McCoy asked. Aye, Doctor, Scott said. That I will, or thrown out my engineering degrees and become a brewmaster.
now that's good.
Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you. I started channeling Brave.
Yeah.
Not a fair exchange, McCoy said under his breath. We'll need a security team to replace us, transport us all but Chekhov, and send down 2... What about Chekhov?
Chekhov has to stay behind to man the station. 'cause
Right,
the
right,
station
right.
can't be alone.
And send down 2 replacements for the next watch period. Kirk out. He returned to Chekhov. Brief your replacements and stay with them until the change of watch. Then I want you back within 4 hours. Yes, sir. What? Chekhov has the...
Chekhov's Russian.
Russian.
Yes, sir. I can't do
That
I can't do
Yes,
Russian.
sir.
Yes, sir. Sorry if you're from Russian. I'm not
You-
trying to
I'm
create
not
an
sorry at
American
all.
If you
accent.
remember,
My
like
accents.
all the Russian accents from Stranger Things.
Yeah. Spock, Kirk, McCoy, and Chapel began to transport seconds later. When they were gone, Chekhov smiled nervously at the Vulcan and stood stiffly by the doors of the mess. I hope the presence of my men won't inhibit you, he said. They are most welcome, Radek said, passing him to leave. Grake, Taprilla, and Takosa followed Anok?
Sure.
Followed. That was the end of the sentence. I just couldn't see the period. Anyway. Anok ordered Vulcan food from the auto chef, then followed his comrades out the door to eat in privacy. I'm sure we all have questions, Kirk said, as they stepped down from the transport stage. And I'm sure you know what my question is, McCoy said, guiding the medical pallet. In my quarters, we need to talk. Let our hair down. He looked at Spock. Most of us, anyway. McCoy left the pallet in Chapel's charge and followed Kirk and Spock to the elevator. Just as the doors closed, 2 ensigns began beaming down the station. Kirk walked through the doors to his cabin and ran his hands through his hair. God help us, he said. There's something... Why did you usurp my authority as ship's doctor? McCoy asked sharply, confronting him. Because they were clearly reluctant to be treated, Kirk said, and Taras? Is that how we're saying that? And Taras hinted they would refuse if the issue was pressed. Regulations are regulations, Bones, but can we actually force them to submit? McCoy backed off, hands on hips. He had no immediate answer, but his anger still hadn't subsided. Spock, why shouldn't we tell them about Yabaka's shields? Kirk asked. I cannot answer that question at the moment, Jim, but there is something clearly amiss on Station 1, and we should come to grips with it right away. I'll tell you one thing that's wrong, McCoy said. The Tarek analyzer picked up some anomalous data. It had no immediate bearing on the case, but it doesn't make sense. And what's that? Jim, the people in cold storage have been interfered with. I couldn't figure out the analyzer displays until a few minutes ago, but I'd swear something has been tapping them, drawing information from their brains or storage information there. Or storing information there. Now, while we're talking about regulations, may I point out how illegal that is? Jim, Spock said, T'Prala evinced not the slightest interest when I mentioned the Sparona had undergone change. This is not characteristic. Nor, I must say, this is the behavior of their son and daughter. A Vulcan youth is not allowed to guide the conversation of his elders, certainly not past the age of Kanafor. So what does it all add up to? There's trouble in River City, McCoy said. I beg your pardon, Doctor, Spock said, genuinely puzzled. Never mind, Jim. We should clear them all out and comb the station centimeter by centimeter. I don't trust any of them. For once, Doctor, we're in agreement, Spock said. Though I am reluctant to detail all of my misgivings, there is something definitely wrong on Station 1. Okay, we're agreed on that. Now for the next problem. The monitors aren't going to let us revive the sleepers. That just confirms our worst fears, Kirk said. Yes, and I'm not totally unprepared. I'm going to go up against the monitors. I'm going to fool them, Jim, and to do that, I'll need Bones. I'll need both of you to help me. Bones, if we mess with the monitors, it means my command. Worse, it means all of us will face court-martial. They sent us here to rescue the people on Station 1, and we can't do it because of a prissy computer with prissy laws built in. My job is to save lives, Jim, whether regulations allow it or not. Clearly, technology has outstripped Federation laws, Spock said. I, too, have investigated the possibility of failings within the monitors. McCoy stared goggle-eyed at Spock, then smiled. By God, he said, I'm beginning to like this tall, green-blooded fellow. Kirk sat down heavily on his couch and laid both palms on the low table before him. It would take 2 weeks for a subspace message to go out to Starfleet and come back. I've taken risks in my career and I've stretched regulations often enough that you should know I'm not squeamish. But I do worse than disobey Starfleet if we circumvent the monitors. I do worse than I disobey my oath to serve the Federation. Every one of us owes our allegiance to the Federation. The civilization branches our government. Jim, I don't ask that we shut the monitors down, only that we tickle them a bit. I could have said that differently.
That makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, just tickle them a little.
Just a little.
Coochie coochie coo.
Coochie coochie coo. And how do you suggest we do that, Doctor? Spock asked. Kirk glanced between them. I never thought I'd see the day when you two would be in cahoots. Why, Spock, seeing that you're so sympathetic, I was hoping you might be able to suggest something. End of chapter. We'll pick up one next time on chapter 13. I want to catch up with chat for a second while,
Yeah.
They say you look like the teacher
Wait.
from Wednesday.
Oh, hold on. Let's start from here. Hey guys, Patrick says, hey guys, just got 2 shirts for the price of 1.
Nice.
Ellery says, I still have glitter on my face from cosplaying my D&D character yesterday, but my coworkers kept telling me it looked good, so I had to pretend I hadn't showered 3 times trying to remove it.
Glitter will never go away.
No, it is the herpes of craft supplies. Shoplifting gets you 2 shirts for the free. Patrick.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Yes. I won't go. Paula says I won't go on my Arizona Coyotes rant. Anywho, that's for reaching. Yeah, that's for reaching the 4K and for giving me a much needed distraction. Nothing's wrong with me per se, but it's been a tough week. It's been a tough few weeks.
Oh, thank
Gosh,
you, Paolo.
tomorrow's
I'm
Friday.
so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry you've been having a tough few weeks.
And I'm sorry for the Arizona Coyotes. It is.
Sorry for invoking their name.
Yeah, they are a mess. I don't know.
I don't know anything about this.
I didn't know they existed. So.
Yeah, I don't know why Gary Bettman wants another desert team, but that's a whole other rant I could go into. Canadian here. No, shoplifting is wrong.
Patrick out here being the voice of reason.
Yeah, only if you're caught, winky face.
Anyway, I love my new shirts. Cool.
Nice.
Nice. Does it say on the back of the book, do not read whilst operating heavy machinery?
There's so many words. I love to read, and even this is like, there's so many words.
It's so boring. It wouldn't
Yeah.
be boring if we weren't reading
Okay,
it.
good. It wasn't just me. Oh my
But
god.
it's so boring.
It's a lot. It's really a lot.
It's going nowhere.
I'm gonna have to read the
Yeah,
other
you know,
half
I have to
alone.
say, I do miss, like, I kind of do miss the parts where, like, he is describing,
He was being sexist.
or no, like, where he's just, like, very much, like, fanficky, like, writing the description of people and, like, the foreplay, as
Yeah.
Natasha put it.
I gotta
Like, at least that's more exciting.
I gotta read the other half of this by myself.
All right,
It's gonna
have
be a
fun.
slog. I hope it gets better.
Or you can read the other half of it when the two of you guys are together during the, the 12-hour.
Oh god, we'll
stream.
lose all of our viewers, and then
Oh, yeah,
nobody
that's
will
true.
donate money. I've
Yeah.
got to get this done.
Okay. Yes, like Natasha said, Dirk mentioned that you look like a teacher from Wednesday. And
Thank you.
Patrick
I haven't
said-
actually seen
It's
all
a cute.
Wendy.
It's a cute little show.
Patrick says, "OMG, Avery is Scotty."
Thank you. Thank you.
My brother irritated me interacting with my half brother.
That's funny.
As a fan of sci-fi, the pro-human stance will be villainous, aka the villain's motive.
I'm sure that's the turnaround, because the whole thing with Star Trek is like acceptance and inclusion. Like I feel like that's the journey this character is going on. But it is just weird to hear people just blankly be like, yeah, humans are better than everybody else. Everybody else are lesser than us. And it's just like, oh god. Oh no.
Have you looked at the human race?
Yeah, we're fascinating for multiple reasons. Avery needs to guest star on Lower Deck as the voice of Scotty.
Oh,
Chekhov has to go be a gun.
Chekhov has to be a gun. That's what Chekhov's doing.
Cluedo Star Trek edition. Chekhov in the bridge. Sigh with the gun. I bet I have Chekhov has a phaser set to kill since it's Chekhov's gun.
Yep.
You know what? We need to send Avery more Star Trek books so she can do the voice some more.
Oh god. I
I'm-
mean, I won't say no. I'll rescue any Star Trek book that you guys
like, I
come
really want
across.
to hear Natasha do some more accents.
Dang.
I think everyone, yeah, everyone
I
wants
think
that.
nobody wants that.
Yeah, I literally can't hear the name Chekhov without thinking of Chekhov's gun.
Same.
Yeah, Anton Chekhov. That's me, my name. Sorry, Greg. Cool. With all due respect, being friends with aliens is cool.
Yeah. We rest in peace, Greg, but we just have questions. That's all.
Blame the League, Buttman's at fault. Yeah. Exactly. These novels are fan fiction. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're absolute.
Fan fiction comes from the Star Trek community in more ways than one, we're learning.
Yeah.
Not only was the Mary Sue archetype classically started in the 70s as a parody of a Star Trek fan fiction, but these are very fan fiction-y. And to be fair, it's the same with Star Wars books. I have a few of those that I need to read too, and they're very much the same, where it's just like, this is fan fiction. The 80s were big on books like that. But yeah, it is almost 8, so Natasha has to get out of here because Natasha has a very early call time in the morning, so we will let you guys go. But thank you guys for being here so much. Thank you for 4,000 subscribers, and I will see you sometime soon to finish reading this book.
I'd be up for hearing more of Natasha's expert Russian. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Yes.
Good
I
night,
think
guys.
Russian
Night,
people
Paolo.
would disagree with you, but thanks.
I'm sure Scottish people will disagree
I
with you.
don't think they'd be so much like. I don't think they'd be offended, more as confused. They'd
Yeah,
just be more like,
that's a fair.
they're
That's
like,
a fair.
"Hey,
reaction.
is she
What?
making fun of us? I can't tell."
To be clear, when I do my Scotty accent, I'm not making fun of you. I'm trying my best.
I started trying and then it just devolved from there.
Back
Thanks.
in time to see the end of the stream. Nice. Yeah, bye, Cameron. Thanks for being back. Thanks for stream. Take care, y'all. Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye, guys. We appreciate you.